Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, March 25th. And Ms. Horn with Shepherdstown Middle, I believe, is here to have somebody lead us in the pledge. Good evening. We already did.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to present some of our students that we're very proud of. Our student who leading the pledge is Will Shively. He is one of the champions of a new program at Shepherdstown, our mentoring program, where our students visit the elementary students twice a month and just support them socially and academically. Additionally, you can tell, you'll see him again in a little bit, as our captain of the basketball team and the top scoring student in Shepherdstown Middle history.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a full house this evening, Mr.
There's lots to
Vogel.
celebrate, especially this time of the year. I'll start off by thanking all of those who have come out for public comment. Not only is it a very important part of our process, but they've also agreed to give way to the folks who want to witness a recognition so that the parents and family members can see and support our students as they're recognized for their good deeds. I'll start off by asking Mr. Lee Eversole to come up to introduce our first honorees this evening.
There you go. Hi there. Good evening, Dr. Gibson and members of the board. I promise to keep my, what were to have been extended remarks brief. I will say that in reading the stories that our judges have submitted as winners this year, I just thought quickly of Robert Coles, and I know Mr. Osborne knows who Robert Coles is, but he is a pediatrician and child psychiatrist, and one of the things that he talked about was the moral imagination of children. And I have to tell you that all of these stories, all 6 of them, have a deep exploration of the moral imagination. Put in a short way, it's not about talk to the tune of the hickory stick, it's more about what Rodgers and Hammerstein sang in South Pacific, where it is, you have to be taught to hate. These kids really did explore the issues. For example, Chelsea, in her story titled 5,840 Days, explored what it was like to turn 16, that's the number of days in 16, and especially the difference between simply being heard and to actually being listened to. When we explored this gentleman's wonderful story, Connor's story, the animator, he really explored the loneliness of the creative process and what it's like to finally make a breakthrough in an unexpected way. Then in Faded Memories, our Shane friend here, he actually explored grief and death with the loss of an unborn child. A very sad story to read. And then Oven, who's back there, Miss Thorne, she actually explored in her story, the smartest cat in the world is actually a highly moral story because the cat actually saved a life, which is an amazing story of anthropomorphism. Then Kylie Klein, again a 3-time winner by the way, she explored what it's like to have a grandparent experience Alzheimer's and no longer recognize themselves and actually talk to themselves in the mirror. And then last but not least, Shay over here, he explored what it's like to relate to our uncle and our parents who actually teach us new things and actually freeing animals from a trapped net. So, with that having been said, we're going to do the reverse order, sort of like we did at our other recognition, and we're going to allow the oldest person to go first, and that would be Connor, because I don't think Chelsea is with us. Please know that Chelsea Wells, a junior. Are you? Oh, you are here. Yeah. Well, there she is. Chelsea Wells, come up here, please. Yes, well, no. She actually is a 2-time winner of our West Virginia Young Writers Contest. She actually won last year as well. She's now a junior at Jefferson High School, and we are grateful to have you here. Congratulations, Chelsea.
Thank you.
All right, this gentleman is Connor Herfuth, and we are very glad that he's here. Again, he is a 10th grader at Washington High School, and he is placed for us. Thank you. And You will likely recognize this winner's mother. She is none other than Ms. Kristen Martin, the principal of Tiala Elementary. But Shane Martin wrote an incredible story that really the judges they told me that was certainly one among their favorites because of the deep moral purpose in it. And then, this is Ava Thorne at Shepherdstown Elementary, where she's in 5th grade. And again, she wrote The Smartest Cat in the World. We're very excited that you're here. And then Kylie Klein. There is Kylie Klein. Now, we're going to have to pause just a brief moment. Kylie is not only a 3-time winner of our Young Writers Contest, she actually placed 3rd in the state this year. So we're very proud of Kylie Klein, 4th grader at North Jefferson Elementary. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you Shay Oben. Again, Shay is a 2nd grader at North Jefferson Elementary, and his story is entitled Trapped in a Net. Ladies and gentlemen, the Young Writers.
Except for the elementary, we'll do in the front, and then middle and high in the back. It's like a soccer thing. Go right ahead and stand in there. Okay, everybody. Cable will get you in there. Writer's block on 3. 1, 2, 3. Another one for good measure. There we go. Thank you all very much. Thank you, principals and parents, for being here to celebrate our students with us. Up next, we go into the wide world of sports. I'd like to invite Principal of Shepherdstown Middle School, Rebecca Horn, back up. She's going to introduce the Shepherdstown Middle School basketball team, who, as you can see from their T-shirts, were state champions MAC champions this year, the Mid-Atlantic Conference. All right, if we can get all the players and Principal Horn, come on in, and coaches. Come on in.
Coach Bullett's going to do our introductions.
Fine. Coach Bullitt will be doing the introductions of our players this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Horn, Principal. First, I'd like to say real quick about the basketball program. Can't have a good program without support staff, and we had a very good support staff. I don't want to miss my managers because what they do is very, very important. Trevor Donnelly, he's on the book, and he's the best book person I've seen in middle school. He does a great job on the book. I don't have to worry about getting a technical. Tyler Lee is our bench manager. He's making sure everybody is hydrated. Also, the floor is hydrated because he spent a lot of water on the floor. Roland Cabero, he films all the games. And, of course, Miss Carter, she keeps the stats, which is very, very important. Those kids get a stat sheet after every game. So she does a great job. She's been doing it for a long time. And Mr. Shively, he announces our starters and our rest of our players. And that's always nice. The kids enjoy having their names being called and they're introduced. We introduced the home team and the away team.
Is he calling them tonight?
No, I'm going to call them tonight. Okay. So I did want to introduce my support staff. My captain this year, and he's been with us for 3 years. He's played on the varsity as a 6th grader, and that's Will Shively. And in the North semifinals, 6-minute quarters, Will scored 42 points, and we beat North in double overtime. So he wasn't going to let us lose. Carter Haynes. He's not here. Okay. Orrin Humphreys. Not here. Tommy Gallo. Justin Spickler. Zach Lawrence. Zach didn't miss one day of practice. He was at every practice. Moses Talley. Danny Vanderpool. Cameron Crickler. I found Cameron in the physical education class. I said, Cameron, you got to come out for the basketball team. So he could get in there and push water around a little bit. And he did a good job. Very dedicated young man. Kylan Johnson. One of our many seventh graders. So Kylan's already said back to back, we're going to be back here again next year. Okay. Wyatt Shively. He's the other seventh grader on the team. Ty Vickers. And he's the other seventh grader. We had three seventh grade starters, and they did a great job. My manager, Tyler Lee. Ronan Cabrera, he's not here, I don't think. He's one of my managers. He did the filming, and he did a great job. Trevor Donnelly, my bookkeeper. He's not here? Okay. And Miss Carter. And I want to also introduce my assistant coach and my JV coach is Coach Branson, Tierra Branson. And his kids, I want to say something about our JV kids. You know, when you have a program and you're winning, I know I was able to take his seventh graders up on the varsity, and they did very well. But his JV team, they always start real slow, and they always get a whole lot better by the end of March. So I mean, he does a great job with our JV team. And I also like to thank Dr. Gibson and the board members for inviting us here tonight.
Want to go over and get with the team?
Yes.
Coaches, can I have the coaches take a knee in front? Oh, that's right. I did coach. You didn't I? Coach, can I have you come front and take a knee? Oh, okay. No, that's not your. These guys are standing in the back, but we're going to reverse it this time. All right, champions on three. 1, 2, 3. Champions. Thank you very much, gentlemen, ladies. We had a nationally recognized student with the Renaissance program here to talk about that. I'd like to welcome Jefferson High School Principal Sherry Fitzgerald, who I think was close by. I think she's coming in. There she is. Perfect. Appreciate your patience as we do the logistics.
Yes, the revolving door out there, so thank you. Sherry Fitzgerald, Jefferson High School. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Katerina Rashitsky. She is one of our students at Jefferson High School, a senior who does lots of amazing things, but she's been a part of the Renaissance initiative at Jefferson from the beginning. She attended the national conference. She's been to a couple of regional conferences and a couple of rallies. And today, she and her other fellow students in the leadership class put on the first, I'm going to get choked up because it was beautiful, our first 8th grade step-up day. And so we had all of our rising 9th graders from the middle schools come over for a real Renaissance-like rally, and it was beautiful. And it was all of the kids from the leadership class. So, and I know Katerina played a huge role in that. She gives us a huge social media presence with Jefferson Renaissance, and so she has done a fantastic job really being the face of Renaissance, being the face of Jefferson High School for us, and she was recognized as a National Student of the Month by Jostens Renaissance. So please join me in thanking Katarina for the incredible work that she does.
And while I have her, the 2019 Staffordly Renaissance of the Month, our own Sherry Fitzgerald.
Stand next to Katarina.
We share here. Back in the days of film, we might have had to, right, Mr. Cable? Renaissance on three. 1, 2, 3. Huzzah! Sorry, I always think of Ren. Thank you. All right.
As you come in, go stand behind the table, right behind the members of the board.
Back over to Shepherdstown. Shepherdstown Middle School had another wonderful achievement that we're going to celebrate. We had toyed with the idea of bringing their instruments. You might recognize them better as the jazz band. However, that would have taken up the rest of the hallway. So.
However, it would have been greatly entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Is that everybody? So, again, yay Shepherdstown, and I appreciate Miss Harner and Miss Skinner representing in their Shepherdstown red and black. So I would like to introduce Mrs. Chad Conan, our band director, who will give a little information about the illustrious awards our students have won and do a quick introduction.
Thank you, Ms. Horn. My name is Chad Conan. I'm very, very happy to bring these kids down here tonight to be recognized. You know, it's a goal of the band program at Shepherdstown Middle School to bring the community and the school together through the music. And that starts every year in August at the county fair, as it did with this group. They formed in July and they performed in August. And then they performed at the Asbury United Methodist Sounds of Fall concert in October, the Shepherdstown Community Thanksgiving service in November, the concerts for the school in December, and they performed at Shepherdstown Elementary School, North Jefferson Elementary School. They performed for the Rotary Club of Shepherdstown and got breakfast at the Bavarian. That was sweet. And they also just performed for the Community Club of Shepherdstown. And so that goal is met before they even enter really this honor competition. And what happens is every middle school and high school jazz program in the state plays at a festival on March 2nd. And they're in 3 regions, northern, southern, and eastern. And then the top scorers from those on the 2nd, their recordings are sent to a panel of judges that judge all the bands from the state and choose a top middle school jazz band and a top high school. And this year, the top middle school was these kids right here, Shepherdstown. Sam Struthers, would you come forward? Sam just has a couple of remarks, and then I'll just name the kids, and that'll be that. Go ahead, Sam.
The Shepherdstown Middle School Jazz Band performed our honor concert on March 7th at the Convention Center in Charleston. On Friday, we visited the Senate chamber at the Capitol building before the Senate session began. We walked to the Cultural Center and toured the West Virginia History Museum before driving back to Shepherdstown in the snow. The jazz band and Mrs. Conant would like to thank Miss Horn, Dr. Gibson, and all of you for sending us to Charleston for our honor concert and for recognizing us here tonight. Thank you.
Anyone announce their names?
I will read their names. When I call your name, just raise your hand, wave to your mom and dad. They're here. Andrew Oyerly, Sam Struthers, Patrick Wilson, Alex Rashiski, Sam Coram, Caden Fowler, Jenna Anderson, Ellie Kemp, Tommy Gallo, Isaac Coltrane, Jillian King, Chris Soria, Vaughn McFarland, Morgan Blake, Emily Jack, Isabel Peterson, Natalia Rushiski, Hazel Parker, Lincoln Randall, Cecilia Welch, Nate Kelly, Solomon Logan, Alex Arts, AJ Spears. Congratulations. Chris and Sam and Natalia come in front on just kneel on the floor. Yeah. Perfect. What, sure.
Okay, everyone, this way. All jazzed up on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. There you go. All right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. A lot of literal moving parts here. We celebrate a lot of the wonderful things that our students do academically, athletically, musically, and it's also important for us, I think, to take some time to recognize our staff when they have an achievement. They work really hard, I think, to make our kids excel and help them excel, so we're going to do that today from Charlestown Middle School. I'd like to welcome Assistant Principal Nicole Reed, who's in for Mr. Wink, who has the flu.
Yes. Good evening. On behalf of our staff and our administrative team, we will recognize Mrs. Allen. We are very proud to have Mrs. Allen as part of our staff. She works daily with 176 band students, working with them to have them achieve their highest level of performance, and for that we're very proud. We're also very proud of her recent invitation into the Phi Beta Mu fraternity. Mrs. Allen, congratulations.
Thank you. I do want to say that 5 other headband directors are also members, and there are only about 36 members in the whole state. So now there are 6 just from Jefferson County, so which is pretty achievement.
Great life on 3. 2, 3. There we go. Thank you very much for being here.
That was painless. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate
Thank you.
it. And along that same vein, I'd like to go into our Spirit of Jefferson Awards this evening. As you know, every month we select a professional and a service person to recognize. We also select a volunteer of the month to recognize. And we are going to start off. We need Sherry Fitzgerald back. You all set? We'll jump ahead to our volunteer, Miss Belinda Smith.
Good evening. Unfortunately, Mrs. Smith could not be with us this evening because, quite frankly, she's probably off volunteering somewhere. She is outstanding. She has been a driving force with our vocal music program. Mrs. Smith had a daughter who graduated a few years ago, and while her daughter was with us, she came, she altered costumes, she made costumes. Then when her daughter left, I said, Mrs. Smith is going to be leaving. And Mr. Cooper said, no, she's not. She's going to stay around. Mr. Cooper is a driving force. She stayed with us after her daughter graduated, and then her son came to us. She continues to work with our vocal music program. We're so happy to have her. As I said, she makes costumes. She alters costumes. She does all this in her free time. She comes to school and sizes the kids. She's awesome. And I think she's a reason why that our kids feel so comfortable, and our chamber choir did win the competition on Friday evening, and we attribute lots of that to Mrs. Smith as well as, of course, to Mr. Cooper for their efforts. And I'll make sure she gets her certificate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You can tell they're working hard when they're too tired to even show up to be recognized. Up next, I'll welcome back Sherry Fitzgerald from Jefferson High School for our Service Person of the Year, or our Professional Person of the Month. I'm sorry, I'm still in last week's mode.
That's right, exactly. Well, very good. Well, me again, Sherry Fitzgerald, Jefferson High School. So I'm glad to introduce to you definitely a Spirit of Jefferson recipient and very much deserving, Amy Vickers. She's one of our English teachers at Jefferson High School. I'll just borrow the fabulous words from your for the person who nominated you, because they really do capture the true essence. I mean, Ms. Vickers is a fantastic teacher. She's well loved by her students, by her peers. Ms. Vickers goes above and beyond for her students. As a host parent of a foreign exchange student, I have found Ms. Vickers to be an exceptional resource person for my student. When I have had trouble finding answers elsewhere, Ms. Vickers stepped up, even though it was outside her area of responsibility, and she helped us. She truly cares for all of her students, and it shows. Ms. Vickers embodies the spirit of Jefferson County Schools. She puts her students first, both academically and emotionally. When students or parents are struggling to find answers or need help, she is never one to turn them down. She goes out of her way to assure their success, and I can vouch for that. You work very hard, and you're absolutely well deserving of this recognition. So, congratulations, Amy.
Sort of there between Ms. Roper and Ms. Scott. Teachers are my hero on 3. 1, 2, 3. Teachers are my hero. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Sherry. And last but certainly not least, our Spirit of Jefferson Service Person of the Month. I need Chris Walter from Wright Denny. He's swimming against the tide. You'll have to give him a second. There he is. All right, come on in, sir. Welcome.
Long line out there. If I could, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jay Martin, who is our Service Personnel Award winner for the Spirit of Jefferson Award for the month of March. I'll let Ms. Stobbs go ahead and say a few words so I don't steal her thunder, because she is the one that recommended him for the award, and I will go after that.
I just wanted to recognize Mr. Martin because he's always willing to go beyond what he needs to do for all of us. Some days that consists of taking furniture down and then putting more furniture up and taking it out and putting it back in. And he always does that in addition to everything else that he does on a daily basis. And he always has a smile on his face, and he always does everything that is asked of him. So I just wanted him to get recognized for that.
And again, just like Ms. Stobbs said there, anything you ever ask out of Jay, he always is willing to do it. He always puts the kids, the building, the staff before himself. I think if you go to any type of event, he's already there, probably setting up for you, breaking it down. The most you ever get from Jay is when you on a day somebody might have gotten sick, unfortunately, and you get a, oh boy. So never a complaint out of him. Just one of the top guys that you could ever want to work with around. So we'd like to congratulate Jay.
If you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to.
Oh, well, thanks for the award. I really appreciate it. I just, try to, set a good example for everybody else or anything. I just try to do the best I can to, help out the teachers out. I mean, the teachers there are real great. They work along with me real well and everything. Like I said, I just do my job. That's about pretty well I can say. But thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
We'll get a picture. You can go around in between Mrs. Skinner and Mrs. Roper. We'll get a picture.
I'll just leave this here.
All right, let's get an oh boy on 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. Oh boy. I'd like to once again thank everybody for being here. Thank you for your patience. This concludes our presentations and recognitions for this evening. On my end, thanks again to the folks who are here for public comment who gave their seats up this evening for the parents and families.
This evening on Relay for Life.
Yes, we certainly do. As you can see, they're here for us. They brought hardware. Pretty exciting. I think Ms. Fowle is going to speak on their behalf. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Heather Fauble, and I'm the Jefferson County Relay for Life event lead. This is my third year leading the event. This is my assistant, Derek Carver, who is also my son, but he is also our youth event leadership lead. So he commits to 2 Tuesdays a month to come in and lead and learn about Relay for Life, and is here tonight to also help with the presentation. So rather than leave all these numbers out loud for you, I wanted to make sure that we summarized how tremendous Jefferson County Schools did last year in the fight against cancer. They were the second place event nationwide, raising $29,192. Our T.A. Lowry Elementary School was the 8th place team nationwide. And then we had 3 individuals, Storm Frame from Charlestown Middle School, Shirley Cole from T.A. Lowry Elementary, and Allison McKee from Washington High School, all placing in the top 10 individual fundraisers nationwide for Relay for Life. Last year we started something in addition to that. Not only do we want to make sure that we're continuing to raise money, because that money goes to research and awareness in addition to helping cancer patients and their families, but we also wanted to make sure that we continue that spirit at the Relay for Life event and leading up to the event. So among the schools, we created the School Spirit Stick, and we had a variety of different criteria: attending meetings, bringing their mascot out, sharing that, just the overall school spirit that we have, along with a relay spirit. And last year, our School Spirit Stick winners for the 2018 relay at the secondary level was Washington High School. And for elementary was North Jefferson Elementary. So both of those schools have been able to proudly display their School Spirit Stick there at their school for their continued participation with Relay for Life. As I mentioned earlier, we started our youth leadership team. Derek is one of the leaders, along with 8 other students right now in Jefferson County from last year that were participants, and we've grown that team a little bit more this year, and I'll talk about that in just a second. In addition to our School Spirit Stick and our phenomenal job raising money, we also want to make sure that we don't forget all the other services that Jefferson County has helped to provide that lets us be able to hold the Relay for Life event. The Transportation Department in Jefferson High School for the use of the facilities for our relay meetings and for the event, and all of the bodies that go into helping getting things unlocked and all the necessary materials there. Thank you to Paige Jackson for the use of their stage, South Jefferson for the use of their inflatable screen and their projection setup, T.A. Lowry for the use of their chairs, Jefferson County for the use of the tables. All of those things are essential for our event to be able to be successful, and we thank you again from the Relay for Life family to the Jefferson County School family. Now, where are we heading for 2019 before I give out these lovely trophies. Just to kind of highlight, already in the 2019 year, Jefferson County Schools have raised $5,799. Most of our schools are on board. We have our maintenance department, our transportation department back on board with us. We're still hoping to get one other school and our central office team back on board with us. We had our county fundraising challenge, which was a hat day on March the 15th, or around about that day. And in just one day, Jefferson County Schools turned in over $1,000 in that one day, just being able to collect money for wearing hats. So we thank you for allowing us to do that. We do have one more countywide fundraiser coming up, and this is Dr. Gibson over there likes a pig. It's become her new friend with Relay for Life. So the team the school that raises the most money, and how many miles can your school donate to fight against cancer? Miss Gibson is going to.
I gotta own that.
So it wasn't the full-size pig. We found some piglets last year that made it a lot better. And Shepherdstown Elementary got to see Dr. Gibson kiss the piglet last year. So we are hoping this year to encourage more schools, and they're already gearing up to see Dr. Gibson come and do that nice presentation.
Other duties as assigned.
This year, our honorary survivor chair is a student of Jefferson County Schools. She attends Washington High School. Her name's Sierra Godfrey, and she just celebrated her 5-year anniversary of being cancer-free, but she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when she was 12. So this year she is serving as our survivor chair and will be sharing her story. And many people not only didn't know Sierra as the cancer survivor, but did know her as the FCCLA president, a student of high honors at Washington High School. She's part of the leadership team. She has been to several of the elementary schools to do presentations and work with the students there. So not only do we get to share her as an honorary survivor chair, but an incredible student of the Jefferson County school system. So as you see, our youth event leadership team has grown a couple more students this year. We have Sierra and another student, Emma, from Washington High School. Blue Ridge Elementary is very well represented, and of course Dreswood Elementary. We have 2 students there. Down at the bottom, just remind you that our next Relay Pep Rally is tomorrow night at the Transportation Department. Again, we start out there at 5:30. And then that our Relay for Life event is going to be June the 22nd and 23rd at Jefferson High School, thanks to the wonderful sponsorship from the Jefferson County Schools. One final note before we present the awards from last year with the trophies. American Cancer Society announced this year, and it's a near and dear cause to all of us here, is that they are earmarking $11 million to pediatric research. So it's not just going into the general research fund, but it is $11 million directly to pediatric research for all the future, and hopefully that we can eradicate cancer. And one day we won't have to stand here and do these presentations, that we can continue to celebrate life and that it's complete survivorship and we can live in a cancer-free world. So at this time, I would like to recognize our 2 top schools, or our top school in our, Benny has one. Our first trophy is going to our top school team, and that is T.A. Lowry Elementary School, and they raised $5,304. So T.A. Lowry, if you can come on down. And they'll be able to display the trophy that also lists every school team and the amount that each school team raised. And then our support services team is going to the Jefferson County Transportation Department, the pedal pushers, raising $3,227.05. Pedal pushers, come on down.
We need a trophy case now.
We'll get right on that.
Dr. Gibson, can we have a trophy case? Please.
Put all the hardware in there from the rodeo too, so maybe it's a good time.
Put in a work order. All right. One, two, one more. Thank you very much. Well done.
And our final certificate is for Jefferson County Schools, and this is for being a platinum sponsor with the Relay for Life.
Get the certificate with the boards. All right, one, two, three. Very well done. Thank you.
Superintendent's comments. Do you have any this evening?
After that stunning display? No.
Before we move on, I would like to mention that on the agenda, number 12B has been deleted for this evening, the central office reorg plan. Just so everybody knows when we get there. All right, number 5A, do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the meeting on March 11th, 2019?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Citizens' comments. Ms. Ogden, are you ready? All right. Thank you very much for being here this evening, but also thank you for being very patient and, as Mr. Vogel mentioned, letting the parents sit here and enjoy their children's moment. That was very kind of you. Also, just a reminder that the time limit this evening is 3 minutes, so if you could please, when Ms. Ogden's phone goes off, wrap it up. We'd appreciate it so we don't have to come pull you off. First up is Jay Mansfield, and next will be Lynn Bocciero.
Hello, my name is Jay Mansfield. I'm from Shepherdstown. My comments are about monitoring pollution and the effect of endurance sports. Jefferson County is different than any other place Rockwell has a factory. 30 to 50% of the time here we have temperature inversions which will trap the pollution near the ground. North Jefferson Elementary School happens to be sited in a geologic trough. Close to 20% of the kids there have asthma, and temperature inversions get trapped in that trough where those kids are. Just for example, 30 to 50% of the time it's dark here. 30% to 50% of the time we have temperature inversions, daytime or nighttime. Smokestacks fail during an inversion. That means concentrated pollution gets inhaled by our children, and it gets inhaled by our community with the highest percentage of African Americans in the whole county. I bet Rockwell didn't know that the NAACP was started in Harpers Ferry. Yes, Rockwell, that's the county where bad ideas like slavery and environmental racism come to die. Why don't you tell us your smokestack fails during temperature inversions? Why didn't you tell us that smokestack failure means children are exposed to magnitudes higher pollution? You should be here to apologize to our community. You say we don't hear the resistance from other factories and we have them all over the world. You actually think we buy that line. Our weather is completely different here. We don't have Gulf winds like Mississippi, Pacific winds like Grand Forks, Great Lakes winds like Milton, Ontario, North Atlantic winds like Germany, Mediterranean winds like Croatia, and Denmark. Denmark has windmills in their ocean, for heaven's sakes. You won't find hundreds of windmills in Kearneysville because there's no wind there half the time. And Rockwell offers our schools what? 2 monitors at about $50K a pop. Your monitor offer doesn't warn us. It just goes off. It's like buying us a hand grenade that goes off as soon as you pull the pin. We need a monitor that that does better than bad air, oops, boom. Please treat our children like you would treat kids in Denmark, even though the kids here are not all white like they are in Denmark. We love all of our children here. If you did, you would be gone and ashamed. I saw the daily pollution output from the factory in Wales. You turn off the monitor when the factory is not in operation. You do this for 2 reasons. 1, you don't want anyone to know just how bad your contribution to the pollution is. 2, you know when you fire up that furnace Sunday night before Monday's production line that the toxicity of the plume goes way up, and you don't want it measured. The average cost for a hospital stay for asthma is around $4,000. So why didn't Rockwell put $2.5 million to $7.5 million in an account for payment of asthma hospitalizations of just the children in the hot zone? But that's just for 1 year. So please be a good neighbor, Rockwell, and invest in our children's health to the tune of $30 million to $90 million so that all the asthma in our children can be handled by a factory that pollutes the air. I remember when Ogilvy, the president of Rockwell North America, told the board that the output from the smokestack at Rockwell was mostly okay. Well, the Potomac River is mostly okay. Go drink it. The tailpipe of my car is mostly okay, too. Rockwell would ruin endurance sports in Jefferson County forever. Thank you.
And after Lynn, we have Donna Joy.
Good evening. I would like to address the board with regards to your promise to provide an independent health risk assessment for the Rockwell plant's pollution emissions. As you have indicated on your website, since the selection committee was unable to engage an independent consultant to provide this work, we still have no study. On February 7th, the Board of Ed publicly announced that it is willing to withdraw from the pilot agreement that provides Rockwell with tax incentives if such a health risk assessment is not provided. Also on February 7th, my husband Joe emailed you with an offer to help the board to solicit such a study from the Centers for Disease Control's Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, ATSDR, through the Division of Community Health Investigations, or DCHI. This is the government agency that would provide this service before the factory is built. He received no response other than a thank you and came to this board personally on February 25th to further reinforce his offer. He has still not received a response from you. Meanwhile, several groups in the community have already made this request to the CDC as concerned citizens. We citizens of Jefferson County are still waiting for a health risk assessment. Instead, we are being told that air pollution monitors will be installed. We don't want air pollution monitors, we want no air pollution. If I were the parent of a child in Jefferson County schools, I would be furious. And if I were a low-income parent of a child in Jefferson County schools who could not afford to move away from this nightmare, I would be furious and worried sick. I would be furious at state officials, local officials, the JCDA, Ranson, this board, and everyone who had a part in inviting Rockwell here. I know you are not entirely responsible for this Rockwell situation, and neither am I, but we both had parts in it. I did not pay enough attention to our local government when we moved here a year and a half ago, and you did not do your due diligence before signing the pilot agreement. I appreciate your service. I, too, am a volunteer who is not being paid to fight this. We both must do everything possible to stop it. Thank you.
And after Donna, we have Michelle Wheeler.
I really care about Rockwell, but I have to talk about other things today, but I'll come back another time and talk more about problems with Rockwell. Anyway, thank you for posting the position of Cultural Diversity Facilitator. I was worried that cultural diversity wasn't valued because of how long it took to fulfill the position after Ms. Roper was elected to the school board almost a year ago. I'm concerned that the position seems to be bogged down with staff development responsibilities, which leaves little time to create and monitor programs for students. It also concerns me that there didn't seem to be a mention of any adequate cultural diversity training required of the facilitator. Will this individual be responsible for creating and monitoring a clear system of accountability? This person should also be knowledgeable in special education, rights, and sensitivities. I've heard numerous comments from staff along the lines of, if you have a disability, you shouldn't be in an honors or AP class. I have students with real disabilities with IEPs. 504s are for kids without real disabilities. During a faculty meeting, when several teachers didn't follow directions, they made jokes saying, we're special ed, and they crossed their eyes to make it look like they were handicapped or had physical deformities. About once each day, I deal with some sort of racial intolerance, misconception about females, or a complete lack of respect for Asians and Hispanic students. We have had numerous instances of anti-Semitic comments and behaviors ranging from playing Hitler speeches during Cougar Hour to programming Nazi propaganda on school computers. There's been no mention of Black History Month, no mention of Women's History Month, and I doubt that anybody at our school really knows that next month is Asian and Pacific Islander Month. There's a lot more to say about that, but I'm trying to be quick. My other concern was, I don't know if you had a chance to read the email that I sent you 4 weeks ago. The only person that responded was Miss Roper, and so I had asked several administrators, faculty members at Jefferson about the possibility of keeping a vial of Narcan with the school nurse at least our high school, but maybe both high schools, and one of the administrators told me that it was a financial issue. So this contains 2 vials, cost $60, so $30 per vial. Over 180 days, the school year, that breaks down to 17 cents per school. This lasts at least 2 years. That's less than 9 cents per day for 2 years. So this is not expensive. I'm willing to give you mine. I take this every day to Jefferson High School in case of an emergency.
And after Michelle, we have Joseph Cummins.
So this past weekend, I decided to kind of go to some primary sources to get myself better informed about the Rockwell issue. So I watched the archived Board of Education meeting of 9/11/2017, in which John Reisenweber pitched the whole Rockwell project to, I guess, 4 out of you here. Reisenweber, the then director of the Jefferson County Development Authority, and surprisingly a resident of Berkeley County. After less than an hour of discussion, he actually asked the board, was there no interest in passing the pilot agreement that night? So the video was very eye-opening and raises many questions. For one, in reading the Board of Education's remarks on Rockwell, it seems that it's been said that economic development contracts were new territory, but I'm wondering what the role of the Board of Education liaison to the JCDA was at that time. And also, like most people, I'm wondering why there wasn't legal counsel sought, especially when the first paragraph, what they call recital of the pilot, referred to the project as heavy industry, to be situated, in Reisenweber's own words, across from North Jefferson. This is in total disregard to the West Virginia Department of Education Legislative Rule Series 172, Title 126, Section 202.06, Policy 6200. While the superintendent did compose a letter dated February 7th, 2019, to a Mr. Zarin, a Rockwell representative, suggesting that the board would pursue, quote, any and all legal ethical courses of action to oppose the enactment of the pilot in lieu of taxes agreement, it is currently unclear to me where this stands. Was this letter an official withdrawal from the pilot, or was it just a suggestion of intent? This brings us to tonight's agenda, new business concerning the monitoring agreement with Environmental Resources Management. It's totally unclear to me why in the world you would want to put the ball back in Rockwell's court when you are supposedly looking to cut ties with them. Though I do believe air quality monitoring should indeed be done, even now when there might be some potential for contamination in the air, I don't think it wise to leave the logistics of such in the hands of the offending party. The bill, yes. The bill, yes, but not the logistical details. So this agreement doesn't even specify what they would be testing for. So I can only hope that the board will keep its eyes on the bigger prize.
And after Joseph, we have Emma Huevos.
I'll keep my remarks short.
My name's Joseph Cummings. I am a football booster at Jefferson High School. My wife is the president of the JHS Football Boosters. I want to bring to the board's attention the condition of the track at Jefferson High School. We now have potholes in the track that need to be fixed. One of the issues is that I understand tonight that there's going to be a possible discussion and action of replacing the turf at Washington High School and possibly the track. With the understanding that we're going to maybe propose spending between $600,000 and $1.1 million. That is all said. I understand that needs to be replaced because it is 10 years old. However, the way the condition of the track at Jefferson High School needs to be addressed, and it should be addressed immediately. It's very sad that we cannot, it's very sad that we have a high school that has won multiple state team track championships now cannot host a track meet. That should be corrected. We also have 5 months to where we start the football season. We're against Millbrook High School on August 30th. We're going to bring people in here that are from outside this area, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to look at it, and they're going, are we going to say that, are we going to fix it? And that should be a top priority. Not replacing the turf at Washington, not replacing the track at Washington, but getting that track fixed. As I said before, I think it's very sad, and I think it's embarrassing to Jefferson County Schools that we cannot host a track meet, even though this county is well known throughout the state as one of the top track schools in the country, in the state. That's all my remarks for this evening. And if you have any questions, you can contact me, give me a call. Thank you.
And after Emma, we have Paul Stork.
Good evening. While I sincerely appreciate the board's efforts regarding Rockwell thus far, and while I remain optimistic that the factory will never become operational, rendering any form of air monitoring unnecessary, I felt it was important to come before you this evening to address the air monitoring agreement with Environmental Resources Management, Inc. they are considering as part of tonight's agenda. As a community, we're now quite familiar with ERM's work. They're the firm Rockwell has used in all their major presentations regarding expected emissions and potential impacts. We've seen time and again how Rockwell has massaged and misrepresented the data to advance their own agenda. So it's not surprising that our community feels that putting ERM in charge of air monitoring at our local elementary schools is essentially putting the fox in charge of guarding the henhouse. For that reason, I ask that you vote no on approving the agreement this evening and go back to the drawing board with Rockwell, telling them that you as a school board will select the firm responsible for all air monitoring. That is not an unreasonable ask. There's an established precedent of industries paying for independent monitoring. That's just the cost of doing business. But that cost and those efforts are wasted if the monitoring is not truly independent and if the public does not trust the monitoring. And let's be clear, as things currently stand, the public does not trust this process. Thank you again for your continued hard work on this issue, and please do not approve the agreement with ERM.
And after Paul, we have Nicola Bastian.
Good evening. My name is Paul Stork. I'm a resident of Kearnsville. I've got two children in your guys' school district, one at Jefferson High School, the other one at North Jefferson Elementary. As a military family, we've had the opportunity to live in several locations, inside and outside of this country. We've also had the opportunity to have our children in an almost equal number of school districts. This brings me to the point of why I'm speaking tonight. In our many moves, we have never had a school district board that has been so blatantly disregarded the safety of our children. Not too long ago, I reviewed the footage of the meeting where the pilot agreement was pitched to you. I noticed that not one member brought up the safety or location issues associated with this plan. It was all about the tax money. Tax money, tax money, tax money. More recently, over at North Jefferson, we learned that the factory that's proposed, which is still less than half a mile from the front door of the building, would be storing, milling, and burning 82 tons of coal a day. This is from Rockwell. This is not ours. Every expert we've asked has said this is a terrible idea and needs to be stopped. In other news, near the basketball court where our children play, a sinkhole is opened. Despite it being reported to you several months ago, it is still open. And with the heavy rain we've endured over the last several months, most likely it is getting bigger. To make matters worse, the water line construction to the proposed Rockwell facility going on near the sinkhole cannot be doing wonders to improve the safety or stability of the ground under the school. My wife and I recently emailed you, Ms. Skinner, about a problem that's been going on outside the school, speeders. We contacted you, we emailed you, we said, this is a problem, we need to fix this. And your response was, I can't fix or can't control what people do outside the school zone. I couldn't agree more. However, you could be getting on top of this, jumping up and down on the sheriff's desk, demanding action. And you could keep jumping up and down on top of that desk until something happens. We did notice that there was an officer that was posted outside the school zone. We weren't sure, however, if he was monitoring for speeders or guarding the Rockwell sign. Moving on to communications issues. As parents of North Jefferson, we are not allowed to post any information regarding Rockwell or any articles related to the effects of pollution on the health and well-being of our children to the North Jefferson Facebook page. This is Polly. Please allow us to post. Also, please attend the symposium on 20 April from 9 to 3 in the Clarion Ballroom in Harpers Ferry. Thank you.
After Nicola, we've got Kirsten Lee.
Good evening. I'm Nicola from Millville. And regarding the ERM, I found interesting clientele that they serve. Boeing, Chevron, Bayer, Ford Motor, General Electric, Siemens, and others. What can we expect? But my friends here are much better in doing detailed research and presenting it. So today I will dedicate a little poem to you all. I know one day you will have to face your decisions when you look back. And that is what I am appealing to today. History is but the unrolled scroll of prophecy. A quote by President James Garfield. History is but the unrolled scroll of prophecy. What do we see? Looking back, a murky brew, clear to very few. Decisions absent-mindedly skipping like stones in view, they sink. In a blink, out of the fog, 500,000 tons of smog, looming, fuming. Young mothers' tears, frozen with fears. Where to next? The text, scrolling into days to come. Where have all the children gone? They moved away. Today, we say, let's clear the air. Just and fair, rewrite this story to the glory of Jefferson County, West Virginia. Thank you for caring for our young and the generations to come.
And after Kirsten, we have Cheryl Pullen.
First of all, thank you for standing up for our kids by standing against the pilot agreement. I join with my fellow concerned citizens in encouraging you to fight not only the Rockwell pilot, but new pilots benefiting heavy industry at our expense and keeping us apprised of your actions. I join with my fellow concerned citizens in asking you to insist that Rockwell adhere to their agreement. They agreed to allow community input not only for the placement of air monitors, but the selection of a truly independent company to perform the monitoring. Environmental Resources Management, the company you will be voting on, is not an unbiased independent entity, but a company already strongly affiliated with Rockwell. We're concerned that they have not disclosed what they will actually be testing for. We are concerned that the contract only goes through 2022 before Rockwell is scheduled to be operating at full capacity. Most of all, we're concerned that a company affiliated with and paid for by Rockwell, with a documented history of manipulating data for the good of polluters rather than the environment, will fail to provide meaningful analysis. Stand your ground and demand Rockwell honor their word like the good neighbor they claim to be. Insist on a truly neutral company approved by the public. Erin Lennox, a community member, has spent the last few months designing, programming, and building air quality monitors that measure PM 2.5 and PM 10, and is happy to donate monitors for the schools. He has sent detailed emails to Dr. Gibson and to Jeanette Honor about the monitors. Please continue to fight for our kids and for the air we breathe. Thank you.
And after Cheryl, we have Catherine Joswick.
You got it.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Pullen from Shepherdstown. Thank you for all you've been doing to protect our students from harm. I'd like to remind everyone of why we must fight Rockwell. In the early 70s, I taught first and second graders in a coal mining town not far from Morgantown, where many of the students exhibited signs of learning disabilities. More recently, I taught students with special needs in Fairfax. I've included several articles in the packets I passed out on air pollution's impact on child development, but will only read two parts of a quote from the National Institutes of Health. Ultrafine pollution particles pose an especially high risk because they can more easily enter the bloodstream and travel through the body and the brain. A specific class of pollutants formed from fossil fuel combustion and commonly found in areas of high automobile traffic contribute to the loss of or damage to white matter in the brain. White matter contains the nerve fibers that are critical in helping neurons communicate across different parts of the brain. As children grow and experience the world around them, well-functioning neural connections provide that foundation for continued learning and development. I don't want to be an alarmist, but our prisons and jails house a number of people with learning and other disabilities. Too many prisoners cannot read, write, or do math at a level that allows them success in a job market. Therefore, the second point I would want to make is concerning the number of those with learning disabilities or other disabilities in prisons and jails. Once again, I'm just going to quote from one of the articles from the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. There is an epidemic in our juvenile justice system right now. The ARC is working tirelessly to address. Even with the decline of juvenile crime and incarceration over the past 10 years, youth with disabilities, including intellectual and development disabilities, are being incarcerated at higher rates. One study reports that 65 to 70% of the youth involved with the justice system have a disability. That is 3 times higher than the rate compared to youth without disabilities. The results of studies of air pollution and child development indicate to me the possibility that learning and other disabilities can lead, in some cases, to being involved in the justice system. While we know many factors may combine to create these issues, and there is also intersections of poverty, race, gender, etc., as individuals who are concerned about our own children, and as a society that reaps the benefits of a healthy, well-educated public, or pays the cost, we must control as many of these factors as we can. We need to stop the industrialization of Jefferson County. Thank you.
And after Catherine, we have Christine Weimer.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to speak again. Wow, that was fast. Anyway, it was with extreme dismay that I viewed tonight's agenda. And the cause of my dismay was twofold. First, like other speakers, I had hoped to hear something about the rescinding of the pilot agreement. And we have heard nothing about the BOE rescinding the agreement since Dr. Gibson's letter on February 7th, 2019. Dr. Gibson's statement that the BOE holds their duty to children's well-being as a sacred covenant with the community they serve was hailed by concerned residents of Jefferson County as proof that the health and safety of our children was finally being placed above monetary or corporate interest. It even brought tears to my husband's eyes, actually, and he shared it with his coworkers. The scientific literature is replete with studies that show the threats to our students' health and safety through the proximity to heavy industry. And we urge you to attend the symposium on the 27th of April, in which experts from the CDC, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, and other institutions will provide you with the most recent data on the effects of pollution on children. Secondly, the proposed air monitoring agreement with ERM is plagued with problems. First, Rockwell detailed in their open houses a process for air monitoring considerations. And specifically, they said that there would be a dialogue with stakeholders. They would determine the emissions to be measured. They would agree on the location of monitoring stations using climatological factors. None of these steps have been completed, at least as detailed in the current monitoring agreement. Secondly, as Emma and other speakers have addressed, ERM contributed to Rockwell's air modeling analysis to the DEP. This modeling has serious flaws, as detailed by a community member who is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I have that report here for you, and I will leave it for you. As you also put these on your website, I will also send a link so that you don't have to scan them all. And we do appreciate you putting them all on there. Like Emma said, this brings to mind the idiom of the fox guarding the hen house and does not engender public confidence in their independence or ability to provide unbiased, meaningful data. The agreement is devoid of any critical information, including the exact specifications of the pollutants to be monitored or the equipment, as well as the monitoring frequency. I would urge you to reject this agreement pending the drafting of a more comprehensive agreement that includes the input of citizens, as well as parents and relevant independent experts. Thank you.
Hi. First, I'd like to say that I was really disturbed by some of the things that she shared. As a disabled person who has achieved a lot, if I do say so myself, I just want to remind everybody that disabled students are only limited by the limits that we teach them to impose on themselves. Okay, now I'll start. Good enough. A salutation my dad used to use. Good enough, he used to say. It used to make me smile. Now it's a statement that frustrates me, because commonly in medicine, good enough is just not good enough. And in life, sometimes, good enough is just not good enough. Sometimes we need the best, because what we're working on deserves that. It's just that important. 3 weeks ago at the Charlestown Council meeting, I sat behind a woman who was holding a sign that said, "Vote yes on the bond." And when one of the speakers mentioned North Jefferson, she turned to the person to her left and she said, "Everybody knows you don't send your kids to North Jefferson." And that statement struck me, because there's a difference between knowing and being able to do something about it. Yesterday, someone said to me, "Why do you care about North Jefferson? Your kids don't go to school there anyway." And my niece, that's right, she doesn't go to school there. But there's only one difference between my niece and all those kids at North Jefferson. She's lucky. She's not inherently more deserving of anything than any of those students. But she's lucky enough that her parents have the means, the understanding, and the dedication that they can send her places where she can get the educational opportunity that's the best for her. If Rockwell comes, a lot of those kids at North Jefferson, their parents don't have the means to send them to a different school or to change their district. Now, I believe in learning from and growing from hardship. I've had my own, as I said, and I'm thankful for them. But please don't make a false equivalence. Growing up in an economically disadvantaged household is not the same as growing up with a life-threatening acquired disease that you got because of a situation that was thrust upon you because you are a member of a disadvantaged community, economically disadvantaged community. So a company that is supposed to monitor the air pollution that Rockwell makes that reaches those kids at North Jefferson, that is paid or has previously been paid by Rockwell, is just not good enough. Because those students at North Jefferson, they deserve the best. Because they're just that important. Because there's no difference between those kids and any other kids. The only difference is luck. And I know you believe that. And so I'm asking you to seek the best air quality monitoring company, the best air quality monitoring system. Because those kids at North Jefferson, they deserve it. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any changes or do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll move.
Second? Any discussion?
Yes. Finance consent agenda 9B. There's nothing, I mean, it's just a 15-page transfer, 19-page transfer listing, and it's perfectly fine, but it's on administrative content, and because of our sunshine laws, I'd like to pull that until we can place it on the public content so that everyone can see that it's perfectly fine.
So you're referring to
9B. That's for action on approval of budget supplements and transfers. Like I said, it's fine, it's just that it's on the administrative content section of the agenda, which I would feel better if it was on the public portion of the agenda so that we're following our sunshine laws.
We are following the laws. I mean, we don't have to list line item by line item on the agenda. It is, you know, published and the public does have an opportunity to see it.
But I don't see how, if it's under administrative content, how can the public see it?
Ms. Maroon, would you mind?
I think it's how we have done it, and I've had that correspondence, and it's a budget transfer and supplement. It's been done that way for 15 years. But I do not have an objection to budget transfers or supplements being public content. Depending state board approval, I have no objection to that. I think the other is financial statements, and I do have an opinion that's different than budget transfers.
So you agree it's okay to put it on public content?
I have no objection to budget transfers and supplements pending state board approval being under public.
I just feel better since it's under consent agenda, which takes our vote.
Okay, so so you're asking that we remove
Yes,
9B. Is there anything that's going to matter as far as timing goes
Nope,
if that gets bumped?
Not for budget, nope.
To
I
our
think
next
it'll be
meeting.
fine to wait until the next board agenda to add them to public content. And then it'll be 2 weeks delayed getting to the state board, but I don't think it'll impact it at all. I think they only meet once a month anyway.
And we're not gonna miss that once a month window if we postpone it until April 8th, I believe it is.
I think it'll be fine.
Okay. Any other discussion or comment? So we have a motion on the floor then to remove 9B from the consent agenda.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda, right? And it was seconded. So we have to either vote that down or vote that through and then vote for an amended motion. You see what I'm saying?
Amended motion first, because if we vote it up or down, then it's done. So we have,
the motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. That was what was stated.
If we do a motion to amend the consent agenda and then vote on the consent agenda. I'm drowning here.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. So there's a motion to amend the motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second on the amendment? Okay. Last call on a second. All right, so the amendment does not stand. So now we have the motion to approve the consent agenda as originally posted. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Down to unfinished business, number 12A, the 2018-19 school calendar update. We have not had any more snow days.
Don't anticipate any. We have the paper in front of you with yellow and green on it.
Somewhere.
At the last board meeting, you approved the students' last day, so this is just wrapping things up for the teachers. The green portion of that shows the personnel part of how those days would be converted. That June the 7th, Friday, and Monday, June the 10th would be the two professional learning days, the faculty senate meeting, and the Tuesday, June the 11th would be the prep day for teachers, and then the 12th is the in lieu of day for every teacher that have participated in 3 parent-teacher conferences, open house, or graduations. They would not work on that day, so that would be the majority of our folks. Last day would be on Tuesday, June the 11th.
So this is just an update on the staff
Yes,
calendar.
right.
The
Nothing's-
student
the
calendar
students are
is
set,
staying the same,
right.
where June the 6th is still the
Yeah,
last
just
day.
that I failed to bring up the staff in its entirety at the last meeting.
Any questions or discussion? And that's just an update, you're not asking for action, correct?
I think I need your approval, just as we didn't set this the last time, as far as this teacher's last day. I don't believe that we,
Okay.
So moved.
Second?
What is the date of the teachers, that the teachers will actually be in class? Like the very last day that their presence is
that would
required?
be the 11th. That prep day is the teacher's last day is the prep day.
Okay.
That's a day where there's no meetings to go or anything. They're just given the opportunity to close things down.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Pat, about the teacher-student parent conference? So, how's that gonna happen? It looks like it's moving from June 5th to June 12th. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Right.
They've already taken
Right.
place.
The original calendar would have had it on June the 5th before we had to make up our snow days. And
It's the nighttime conferences that they've already had, they're getting credit.
they had a conference
on
in
that day for
October.
that.
And
I getcha. I was thinking they're not having a parent-teacher
No.
conference.
in lieu
off
of
the
it,
top. Like, who's
in lieu of
gonna
the
be
time they've
there?
already spent.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to accept the new calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And then the central office reorganization plan, we've deleted from the agenda because it's a work in progress. On to 13A, approval of policy manual, chapter 7, section 10, revised integrated PE policy.
Right, we previously approved this, the board did, we were consulting with the State Department. It was a new opportunity we had, and Jefferson County was the first in the state to do that, get this policy implemented, and then as the state started looking at it and seeing other policies coming in, they said, whoa, we see some snags in this, and one major one was we were waiving the PE credit the way the policy was written, and it contradicts how it was passed. It contradicts, you have to have a PE credit to pass. So the major thing is the students wouldn't be waiving their PE credit, they would get a pass-fail if they would just participate in the extracurricular activities. They would get a pass-fail for that and not waive the credit because you have to have a PE credit to graduate. As you look through on this, on the other things in red are mostly verbiage that, once again, as the state got more involved in their policy and how to implement it, made these suggestions to try to better define the logistics of the policy. But once again, the major difference is that the students will get a P or F on their transcript for the extracurricular component. So the other parts are mostly the verbiage.
And are you looking for us to
approve that
this tonight, or does it need to go back out?
I'll let it be up to y'all. Discretion. It's something that the state said, you can't waive the PE, even though that's the way the policy was written from the state. That I'm good either way. If you want to give the public opportunity to communicate, and certainly bring it back at the next.
I mean, the policy did not really change. It was just the verbiage of
right.
the
You can
policy.
you can still participate in 2 years of athletics, and you get a PE waiver credit, but you'd get the credit this time with a P or F on it. The process, there's virtual schools, there's virtual Ps involved with getting a grade if you're in the classes. If you're in a physical active class like weightlifting or dance or show choir, then you can. None of that has changed the process still. Then the student would participate in the virtual PE class just as the policy had stated, and they would get a letter grade.
Pat, on the second page, number 2, it says a student must complete 2 seasons of a qualifying sport in order to receive 1 PE credit, waiver - credit.
Okay, the waiver's stricken.
Right, but I don't think you need the other credit, do you?
Oh, you don't need 2 credits, no. No, thank you.
I think
1 credit's enough, we're not gonna give 2 credits.
Yeah,
Thank
in
you.
the other 2 spaces too, I think. No, the bottom one, no, the other 2 are okay.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cable.
So do we have a motion to pass the revised integrated PE policy?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. John. All right. The monitoring agreement with Environmental Resources Management, Inc.
I'm here tonight to bring you the monitoring agreement, and with that, you all have seen the agreement, you've looked over the agreement, we've had agreement by our lawyer 3 or 4 times, but at the same time, we'll ask for it to be approved as is, or changed.
That's 2 stations, right?
Yes, it's 2 stations. And the one interesting thing is we added real-time raw data not to be manipulated data that we get from them.
Were there any other companies that bid on this?
We did not, it wasn't our bidding system because there was no cost to us.
So how then, because there was no cost to us, how did we get these folks?
We didn't.
So this was something that was suggested? Or this is basically them saying, this is what we're gonna provide? So did we ask them if we could choose another company?
That wasn't a question at the time. This has been going on for a long time.
First of all, I don't think 2 monitoring stations is enough. And second of all, I cannot prove, I can't vote for this company the way it is. I think it needs to be a company that is not in cahoots with Rockwell.
Any other comments?
I was thinking, we've got, what, 5 schools within the radius? I think if we're gonna put it in 2, we need to put it in all of them.
Well, I have a couple additional questions where it's telling us in section 6 that it's giving us near real-time raw data, but then it says it's giving us quarterly monitoring reports of summary and detailed statistics. Does that, I mean, the what is still a question as far as what they're giving us, and as far as, you know, quarterly reports, does that mean they're giving us a average of daily amounts, or, you know, on Monday the high and low was this, on Tuesday the high and low was that, or is it just, you know, for the month of March or for the quarter of, you know, the first quarter of 2019, was it, you know, this number? So I think that there are a few other questions as far as what they're giving us and how they're giving it to us. And then also this evening we received an offer from a gentleman to provide the school system with additional air monitors to have a secondary source to pull from. I think one thing we need to confirm is that there wouldn't be any conflict as far as putting a second monitor where these monitors are going. I understand there's a fenced off area, is this correct, of like 15 by 30 or 20 by 20 or whatever the fenced off area is, if it would have any negative impact of having an additional monitor there with theirs, not just the one that they're providing. Just to make sure that there's no conflict there. So as important as it is, as this is an additional safety measure for our students, I think we all agree it needs to be done right. And at the risk of, you know, getting readings 2 weeks later, I think we might need to put this off until at least the next meeting on April 8th, if we can get more information at that point in time. So do I have a motion to table 13B, the monitoring agreement with Environmental Resource Management, Inc.?
So moved.
Second.
So can I ask a follow-up question?
You can
So,
ask whatever.
first and foremost, just so that there's a public level of understanding, we received this request to present to the board. It is not a recommendation of ours that we're bringing that for the board. But if we are going to go back and convey to ERM what the board's, what additional information the board would like, I want to be sure that we go back with exactly what you're asking for. So, number one, I heard if we're going to put, if
rather than simply 2 schools, there would be a request to put it in all schools within the 1 mile radius. Is that accurate? Okay. Number 2, I heard that the board would consider it under the circumstances of there being some independent choice of the company who conducts the monitoring. Is that accurate? Number 3, I hear that pending these other requirements being met, that there needs to be a delineation of what type of data is being collected in terms of exactly what monitoring is going on, how often we'll receive the data, format of the data. That needs to be clarified. Is that accurate? And
To make sure we don't retrieve scrub data.
right. And then the last, this board would like to have an independent, regardless of what this proffer is from ERM and Rockwool, the board will be seeking to place their own independent community air monitors, and we want to ensure that both parties understand that we'll be placing our own independent ones there, and make sure that there's not any conflict with those.
In the
That
same
no agreement.
specified space.
And I think there, in my mind, there needs to be one more thing. And that is, if a monitor, if they give us information once a quarter or whatever, how about on the days when the pollution is there? There needs to be a notification when within whatever if it hits the red line, everybody needs to know that. Not, 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later when they send us a thing. It doesn't do us any good then.
Okay, so
we need to know at least on a weekly, but basically on a daily, if there is if there's if the bottom drops out of it, we got to know it. Not next week or next month. We need to know it now.
Yes, sir. So it doesn't simply need to be a monitoring system to give you rear-looking data. It also needs to function as a notification system if the pollution hits a certain threshold that we can determine through the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Another snow days.
Any other parameters from the board? Because we'll put this into a letter and communicate this back to ERM and Rockwool as the board requirements for any future consideration.
May I ask how the monitoring works? Is it like a text message if it gets to a certain level, or who gets the reports? If it falls below a certain level.
And to Mr. Cable's point, at this point, what they have conveyed is that they'll provide a data report, not a notification system. Oh, it hit this today. No, they give us a report, and presumably Rockwool will report once a week, once a month, once a quarter that says, here's what everything looked like, and simply hand it to you, not a warning or a notification system on the dates that it gets above a certain amount. That was not postulated in the agreement.
Is this monitor something that anyone can look at and read, or is it something contained and there are people who are monitoring it from like somewhere else? Like, is this something that students could look at? And
No, ma'am, it doesn't have any type of, again, at least what's been presented thus far for the board's consideration, it has no external monitoring panel where anybody could walk up and look at it and see what's going on in it. You have to be provided that access to get the data out of it.
What was Mr. Deal talking about in the paper when he said the kids could learn from the monitoring? I mean,
At that point, since none of this had been discussed, and I can't postulate, that was Mr. Deal speaking, but we do have a number of students who already conduct scientific experiments. We do a lot of work with APU, where we have weather monitoring stations at certain schools, and the kids do. They collect data on, barometric pressure and on precipitation and on all these environmental factors. But again, we use kits and equipment that APU very generously purchases for our school, and we integrate it into our science curriculum. I would convey from our opinion as educators, those are two very, very different things.
And I mean, this specifically says that we'll be provided a copy of a quarterly report. So I have a feeling it's not access to, you can't log in to see what it is. It's just a paper report at the end of the quarter.
And certainly if the board would like for us to, I am happy to convey any requirements that you have. If one of the requirements that you'd like to have is, certainly we're not, no one's gonna come in and hack your equipment, but if the request is there needs to be some sort of real-time publication accessible data. That's certainly something that can be
They can do that on computers or whatever, because whatever that thing is telling, it's got to get from the monitor to the box, and from there it can come over the internet and come in here, so that it can come right in here, right in the office, and then we know what's going on.
It's doable. I mean, the weather app has it. So
yeah. APU, if you've ever walked into their offices, they have the big screens up front that monitors both their weather stations and their solar panels for the amount of energy they're generating minute by minute. So again, I don't presume to know the logistics, but I do know that this board has full control over what occurs on their property, and they are asking to put something on our property. Now, I will note, we have no control over outside of our property, but this request was to utilize Jefferson County Schools property and access.
all right, so we have a motion on the floor to table this to the next meeting, which is April the 8th. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Stay for the bus lease, it's good stuff.
Thank you.
All right. 13C. And if it isn't our Jefferson County Service Person of the Year, Mr. Willingham.
And part of the reason Service Person of the Year comes from this Plus, he does amazing things with their. He does it all. I don't know why it's not there. There it is. Yeah, Jason's fine too.
Thank you, Jason.
Their tech guy came right in to help us. Good job, Jason. Appreciate you.
Good evening.
How are you?
No, were they waiting? For those of you that don't know, with me this evening is our coordinator of mechanics, David Bush. I'm very honored and pleased to have him here this evening. Dave has done a great job for us this year. He works hard. He'd be working now if we didn't stop him, I'm sure. And he has worked very hard to lower the defect rate, so I want to honor that. Before we go forward, how low do you have it now?
Well, about 0.5.
0.5.
Per bus.
0.5.
Primary one is already a good number.
Absolutely
0.5
amazing.
is half of one.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing number. So Dave, thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to talk about leasing to own school buses, and we're providing you the reason why first. We have inherited a fleet. The average age of all the buses in our fleet is 8.9 years. We currently have 8 spares, and our new buses have arrived, so we have 12 spares now in our fleet. We have spare buses on the roads every day, school's in session, for a variety of reasons. If we take an academic trip, for example, then we need an extra bus to shuttle the children, especially if other children are already on the road. So we can have spare buses for a variety of reasons all the time on the road. It is recommended by the West Virginia State Transportation Department that we have 17 spare buses for the size of our fleet. Due to some costly repairs of old buses, we're unable to use these buses at this time, so they're just parked. And they no longer receive reimbursement, so it doesn't make sense to keep fixing them. And we do get Step 4 funding. We're state funded for our buses. The buses that get funded are 12 years or younger, when they top out when they're 12 years old, or when they reach 180,000 miles. They just say, here's the rest of your bus money, and that's all the replacement funds you're going to get. The 17 new buses that we would lease to own over a 5-year period would be under warranty the entire 5 years we're making the payments on them. The payments would be due yearly, and we would be using our Step 4 funding for the payments. This would be cost effective and allow us to surplus around 17 to 20 buses, and these buses are from model year 1998 to 2006. So if we aren't getting reimbursement for these buses anyway because they've aged out and they need repairs and they're not receiving money, it just makes sense to let them go. It allows us to receive more buses. We can buy 5 to 6 buses currently with our Step 4 funding on a yearly basis, but we can receive more in 1 year than we could if we purchased them year by year. It's necessary to surplus buses that have exceeded reimbursement and are costing us much more money to keep on the road. We anticipate we'll also be able to purchase a few additional buses during the leasing period. We are going to use roughly half of our Step 4 funds, so we're not depleting our funds by leasing to own buses. We're at around, with our financing, 3.99 interest and $369,000 yearly payments. Our projected Step 4 funding for next year's $684,000 and change. So that's where we would be financially if we chose the lease to own option. Leasing to own buses is going to allow us to purchase 1477 full-size passenger buses and 3 special equipped buses. It will lower the average age of our buses to 5.26 years. Would be a fleet in much better condition than what we have now. Spare buses are typically the oldest in the fleet and not being reimbursed by the state, who provides us Step 4 funding for buses. Without leasing to own, we currently have 51 buses that are no longer eligible for Step 4 funds right now in our fleet because they're 12 years old or they have reached 180,000 mile mark. Leasing to own would bring the number to 34, which would increase Step 4 funding. Leasing to own is not going to cost the county any more money. We're going to use approximately half of our Step 4 funds, as I said, beginning with this year and for the next 5 years. At that time, we'll own those buses. They'll continue to receive Step 4 state funding, and we anticipate this will be approximately $120,000 per year in a gain. If we're able to lease to own the buses, all of our buses would be equipped with the newest camera technology, bringing the fleet up to date with video monitoring, and it would also provide all buses with childminders. In the future, as we move forward, we intend to maximize our Step 4 funding by moving high mileage buses to lower mileage runs every few years, maintaining a lower defect rate in order to have a top-notch fleet, which includes less outsourcing of our buses to outside vendors. Buses under warranty would continue to be outsourced for free repairs, of course. We want to surplus as many buses that do not fit the Step 4 formula in order to be eligible for as much step 4 funding as possible and minimize costly repairs. And we want to perform frequent and thorough preventative maintenance on buses to ensure high quality and a low defect rate. And David, how often do you PM a bus?
Every 30 days.
Every
Well,
30
28
days.
to 30.
Yeah, 20 to 30 days. Preventative maintenance.
Completely check the whole bus. Just like you're doing a state inspection on your car, we do it every month.
Can I ask real quick, Joyce, how many miles on average do our buses get every year?
Each individual bus?
Uh-huh.
That's going to vary. We could have a run in town that might go 12 miles a day and be highly populated and a full bus. And we might have a rural bus. I have one special equipped driver. What does she do? 120? 120 a day. So it varies according to where we send them. If you're going to Avon Bend, you have a lot of, we call them deadhead miles. You're just driving. Okay? So out-of-state buses the same. So it varies widely.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the difference between it's 8 years or 180,000 miles. Is that right?
It's 12 years or 100
or 12 years. So about how long does it take us to hit that mileage? Because I'm sure we hit it way before they're 12 years old on many of the buses.
Very
don't we?
fast without moving. Now that we move runs around.
Okay.
We're trying to maximize that.
Right. So in other words, the gal that's going 120 miles a day, we're going to take her bus away from her in a year or two, and we're going to put it on a low mileage run. You know, and we're just going to keep shifting them
We
to
haven't done that in the
maximize.
past. We're doing that
because
now.
the goal is 12 for us. And I know David. I think the goal is 12 years before the 180,000 miles. So he keeps shifting those around and
Yes.
shifting those around.
We've had some in the past that they don't even get to 5-year warranty before they're out of miles.
Right, that's what I was thinking. Okay. So we haven't done that, but we're going to start doing
That
maybe
is
that.
correct. Right.
Okay.
When Dave and I grew up, our dads owned businesses, so we sort of we think along the
Same line.
the same line. Yeah. We want more for our money. So that's where we stay in the shop is how can we get more for our money, and do it, you know, safety being first, but then putting things in place that get us quality and safety, but stretch our dollar.
So if we, I don't have a problem doing that. I think it sounds like a good idea. But what are we using to measure in 5 years from now? If we're going to lease them for 5 years, what are we going to measure to know that, yep, that saved us money, or no, that didn't, or it was about a break even, and so it doesn't really matter which way we use?
Well, if you
How
come
are
out,
we gonna-
you come out to the shop and sit with David anytime. He can tell you how much money we put in each bus. It's our work orders, and we keep a lot of data on work orders of name a bus. If we said 84, he'd pull it up on the computer and he'd tell how much money we put in that bus. So we track how much money is put in a bus. So that's essentially what we'll do is we'll track data, and then he'll monitor the data to make sure that he's shifting things and it's going the way that it should. And you can explain probably in more detail.
Well, new buses, you wouldn't have anything except oil changes, because it'd all be warranty for the 5 year. So that's going to save a tremendous amount.
And tires.
Tires, yes, tires and brakes. But you know, usually in a 5 year period, you don't change a set of brakes. Maybe 3 or 4 years at the most. So it all depends on the driver.
I believe we could also provide, if what you're looking for is data, part of that is how much money are we getting from the state in step 4 funds based on the increase of buses that now meet their criteria. Right, so if we get an additional $280,000, $200,000 a year.
We're saying we're estimating at 120,000.
But again, to your point, we'll have actual numbers by then, so that we'll be able to show you.
Sure.
This is state bid on buses too. They're already been priced out.
You keep saying step 4?
Step 4.
Step 4 money. The financial budget thing, what would that fall under?
That, on my presentation,
Yes.
would not be included in, the presentation I'm doing is for your general fund.
Okay.
Your step 7 funds, which includes step 4, would be a special revenue, Fund 61.
Okay, it's not here. All right.
That's where your, step 7 and instruction is too.
So you're saying it pays for itself?
Sounds yes.
We're talking about a 5-year cycle
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
Okay, so this year, we do this. We
Mhm.
buy 17 buses or whatever it is,
Mhm.
or not, 5 at least. Okay, what happens next year? Is that another 5-year deal? After that, can we go?
No. No, and I don't think we'd want to. I think we'd just want to start buying a single, or, you know, we work with Beth with our Step 4 funds as well. So if we can have our payment and buy another bus or two, then we'll do that. Okay, if she needs to request some Step 4 funding, which she's allowed to do, we have left her the total latitude to take up to the $200,000 she's allowed to take. So we would continue to just purchase one here or there. What we're trying to do is lower the age of the fleet and better the condition of the fleet. We don't see it as something you'd want to do every year or even every 5 years. You want to kind of do it when you get into that place that it's just not cost effective. So we're looking at leasing one time, 5 years, and then probably continuing to purchase. And as equipment gets older, you want to put things on a replacement cycle so you can make those kind of decisions in a meaningful way about how you want to, whether you want to lease to own or just continue to buy them straight out like we do on a year-to-year basis.
This will catch us up, basically. So now we'll be caught up to where we can get rid of, you know, as we're buying 2 buses, we can get rid of 2 buses. In other words, we can get rid of the same amount we're buying, try to get us in that cycle where we're level.
Okay.
How many total buses do we have, not in our fleet, but how many buses do we have that actually have runs every day?
100.
100.
Give or take, it always changes, day to day.
It's 100.
And these buses that we would lease, they do use the same fuel that the rest of our fleet uses, so they
But
use
they
the
are emission compliant, which
fueling
everyone
station.
that we're getting rid of is not.
And Madam Superintendent, is this one that you're just bringing us, or one that you recommend?
You bet you strongly recommend. Yes, ma'am.
All right. So do we have you're asking for action to
Absolutely.
do the 5-year,
Mhm.
and this is not the surplus buses, that'll be brought to us separately? Okay.
Right, we don't want to surplus anything at this time.
Because we don't have anything to surplus.
Right, we recently went through the surplus, so we've surplus what we're gonna surplus until we would purchase new buses again and make that decision.
Okay. I just wanna make sure that the motion matches what we're doing, not
Sure.
what was, everything that was in the
Sure.
presentation. All right, so do we have a motion to, do the 5-year lease to own buses?
So move.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thanks for bringing down that rate.
You're welcome.
That's good.
We're not done yet. We wanna get number 1.
We're on a mission. And we're sitting pretty close.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's good. We're waiting on the numbers to come in officially.
Right, good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
13D, discussion and possible actions on CEFP public meeting dates.
Hello again.
Okay.
So as you're aware, we've had some of our staff generously contribute their time to lead the CEFP committee meetings. We're getting ready to wrap that up for your deadline. Hope to have the final meetings this week so the information can be available early part of next month. But we also want to make sure that even though we have parental and other community representation on these committees, we want to make sure that the broader community has an opportunity. We proposed, and again in keeping with that May 1st deadline, or last week of April deadline, a series of 4 public hearings. It would be the second week of April, April the 9th and April the 11th. That's a Tuesday and a Thursday. After that is spring break, which is going to be hard if you actually want to get people to come. So we all thought we would then do the following week as well with a hearing on Tuesday, April 23rd, and one following April the 25th. We were going to hold these at all of our middle schools so that we could cover all of the districts within the county. And these will then eventually need to be followed with, once the plan is finalized, more public hearings to share the information. But these will strictly be intakes so that we can get some more feedback from folks on what they'd like us to focus on for continued success over the next decade.
Do we have times for these meetings?
That's to be determined. We were thinking 6 to 8.
Are these official public meetings?
Works for me.
We say the pledge.
We got one endorsement. And again, this gives between the time these committee hearings wrap up to when we have the first one, there's a week for the architects to sort of take the information, look at it, and come up with a few maybe ideas or guidelines that people would actually be able to, when they come to these hearings, see what we have so far and say, you missed this, or we'd like to add that.
Stagger the times, and maybe different people can come to them.
All right. So do we have a motion for the CEFP public meeting dates?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Discussion or questions?
I was just suggesting that perhaps we could stagger the times so that
The
maybe people could.
biggest question will be activities at the schools during the day. That's what was hurting us for trying to do something earlier in the day, because they are often doing things with their students. You could go later, possibly 7 to 9, but earlier is likely going to interfere with practices or something going on in that space.
You mean earlier than 6?
Correct.
Any other comments or questions?
I thought I had is, I mean, I think it's good to have them in the schools as well, but is there some, like some other place that we, if people are hesitant to come to the schools for whatever reason, or community members are not, who don't have children but obviously have community input, is there a place that we could get them to come? And
We can look into it. Our two potential barriers to that I would see would be cost, if someone was going to charge us for a facility, and then just our time frame. We have to get this set, give out notice, and try to promote it to get people there in a very narrow window right now, because we have that May 1st deadline.
The format of these meetings, in the past, when we've had these kind of hearings, we've done them at, Wright Denny and schools that have auditoriums. If you're talking about having a, Charlestown Middle School, for example, you've pretty much got the cafeteria and the gymnasium, where acoustics are not the greatest in either one. I don't know how many people you're anticipating. I mean, because you're talking about having all of the, we've got a ton of different committees. And so is this going to incorporate all of those committees meeting together, or is it more of a presentation to the public, or do we not know yet?
This is my first rodeo. The way I had envisioned this was...
It probably and should be a presentation about what we've already generated, inviting, of course, all of the people from the committees, yet at the same time, if they don't want to come or don't find a reason, think they've been to 2 and then they don't want to come to 3 and 4. Again, I think the architect will be giving us a report, and I know it's what you have talked about. So that report would be updated and give us some idea of what already has been discussed in the committees. But of course, we want really good input from our county, from our constituents throughout the whole county.
And that's why we're doing 4. Don't mistake it that we're still in the small committee groups. This will be beyond that. That work wraps up this week. And next week their work will be finished as committees, and then it's the community working together to make us have continued success out there. So even though there's 4 of them, that's just more opportunity. If you'd rather focus on 2 larger ones, it's the pleasure of the board. We'd be glad to look into that as well. But I felt that 4 spread out in all 4 districts for our middle schools would be ideal. We can look at alternative locations if you'd prefer, but we need to make that decision quickly.
I mean, I love the fact, doing it at the middle schools, because we never get traffic through the middle schools to, show off our middle schools. But at the same time, I'm just slightly concerned about the actual venue. I mean, Harper's Ferry, obviously they've got the auditorium. That one works. But
if we need board approval, our next meeting will be on the 8th. So that's the week that we need to start having these hearings if we're going to get them done by May 1st.
When we had all the meetings, some of you guys weren't on the board then, but when we did the meetings for redistricting the students, we used the middle schools. Two of them I know we were in the cafeteria.
right, we did Wildwood and Wright Denny.
So, and that worked out okay.
I did one at TA.
Yeah.
We could also potentially cater our presentation for the space, so maybe not what we've done in the past, but Ralph and I can work with the architect to make sure that the way the information is presented and the opportunity the public has to interact with us will be suited for the area we have to work in.
Right, I mean, when we did the one at Wildwood, we met in the cafeteria, but then we went to different classrooms and broke out so that was a little bit different format. So, I don't have a problem approving the dates. I just want to make sure, somebody's thought through the venue matching the presentation
It
itself.
hadn't been part of my planning. My planning was more about getting as many folks as possible in the amount of time that we have to work. So I'm glad to change the venues, but we'll need to at some point. If that requires board approval, that's going to be approved the week of. That's our next meeting. We're out of board meetings.
And it doesn't say we can't have more public meetings after May 1st, correct?
At some point we'll have to, but in terms of your deadline for your timeline for this, we are out of time. That's when we need to have our CEFP completed.
Well, I mean, we can give it a try and see.
I don't think we have time to change it. I think we
If
need
this
to
is
go
a
with what
public
we're being
meeting,
offered.
we're gonna post it.
My goal is to put it out there and encourage as many folks to come as we can. And again, Ralph and I can work and try to make sure that it's streamlined and that we're maximizing the space. We'll work with the principals. They seemed eager to help out, so.
Well, if
They
the
may regret
first
what
week doesn't work, then you have a week in between to tweet April 23rd and 25th.
Exactly.
All right, so there's a motion to set Tuesday, April 9th, Thursday, April 11th, Tuesday, April 23rd, and Thursday, April 25th. Any further discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
We take the simplest of things and try to make it difficult. All right, 13E, approval of social studies book adoption review for grades 6 through 12.
Our social studies committee following in. So what we're asking for this evening and is for the board to approve the posted secondary books, middle school and high school books be put on review for 2 weeks so they can be adopted for the next five years. That elementary this state didn't have any approved materials for social studies at elementary level, so they use online resources and periodicals and things, so that's why you don't see elementary represented here. But these folks have worked diligently on going to vendor shows and looking at all this textbook materials and all, and came up with these recommendations. They're all social studies related people from their various middle and high schools that and they can probably answer your questions better than I can if you have questions. But what we'll do is put these on review at each school and at the board office for 2 weeks, so public and parents are encouraged to come and review the books and provide any feedback.
Have we contacted our NAACP representative or the Hispanic representative that we have that we utilize to have them look through any of the materials to make sure that it has some kind of, I know we ran into that issue with the balanced literacy, that it was not diverse at all and we had to actually get different materials?
We can make them aware, can certainly reach out and make them aware that the materials are on review and invite them to come by the board office or any school, the secondary school to review them.
Did you guys feel like it was?
I do feel that they did a much better job. The books that will be reaching the majority of our students and our AP students, I feel that they are reaching out in a much broader area, covering not only Hispanic, Asian, African American, as well as women's issues. So I was very pleased with how the new textbooks were working with those.
And was it a unanimous decision which ones were chosen?
Yes. That's for what we're talking, we're the high school. So both high schools have worked together unanimously with all from AP down to special ed, collaborative, et cetera.
The middle schools were also unanimous as well, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
And how do they integrate as far as middle schools in our honors slash, not honors slash all honors program? How
Well,
you guys are
the actual book we actually chose is a highly differentiated book. The online content, and that's one of the reasons why we did choose it, because it has great materials for those accelerated learners, and it really focused on them, but it didn't forget about the low-level learners too. So there's a lot of materials on there for them as well. And I think there was, of the vendors we had, they definitely did the best, or we felt they did the best on differentiation, offering us various techniques and activities, lesson plans created it, and everything else. It's actually the same book that the same company, the high schools. We all chose the same company, probably for the same reasons, because of the pieces with the diversification and the differentiation that Pearson offered, as opposed to the other companies that we think fell a little short in those areas.
And then, and you said that elementary uses a lot of having to pull stuff off, but what about the technology piece? I know some of our other
That was the selling point for us. That was the selling point of Pearson. It's fully integrated with our Weaver system, so it automatically sets up our classroom rosters for us. It's not something teachers have to go in and enter. You find that a lot of times these technology pieces are great and wonderful. They got all these great bells and whistles, but so many times you have to enter 150 students. And it's very time consuming for a teacher to do that. They don't set that up, and then they don't use it. They lose a lot of the content on there. Pearson does it for you. So it's already set up, so there's nothing that the teachers have to do other than just go in there and start assigning assignments and doing this. And that's the beauty of it. So I can have, little Timmy who's accelerated, I can assign him the accelerated assignment, and little Johnny who may struggle a little bit, his assignment is the same assignment, it's on his level. And they can go out there and they can work on those assignments themselves. And a lot of it's, downloaded, and we can do it offline as well.
And there's also a capability that a lot of the content can also be put over into Spanish, which will help a lot of our ESL students, especially those that are, first year or so into this area.
All right, before I ask for a motion on the approval of the social studies book adoption review for grades 6 through 12, I just want to thank you guys for hanging out this long. I know it's a little on the late side, so. Do I have a motion? Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. 13F, discussion and possible action on Washington High School athletic field and/or track.
You all have received the report, and in the report, basically it states that the field was, has more than met its normal usage. It was put in 2008, and it's between 8 and 10 years is expected to be replaced. It's now 11 years old, so it did maximize the time that we have. The outside edges are made out of wood. Those wood pieces have degraded over time and made it very dangerous. We have a sinkhole in there, as we've all talked about, that needs to be remediated. And at this point, we have repaired it 3 or 4 times. And at this point, if you go to cut the field, you can't put it back together because the field's in too bad a shape. So, as you read through what we have done and what we needed to do, there's really, sooner or later, and now sooner than later, the field will have to be replaced. Some of the safety concerns, again, were the amount of fibers that have basically just wore away over the time, because it is a year over what we ever would have expected it to stay, because 8 to 10 is the normal. We're now at 11. This could and can be done this summer, which is great, because then he guaranteed me by August 1 he could be finished. August 1 is when you start football practice normally. So that could be done in that amount of time. The field turf company is who we were looking at, and they have the state bid for this. So again, having the state bid price is the best price we're going to get, and is also legal to go with just their bid. They're also the, let's say, premier football field creator at this point. But you have also seen the bid both ways, with and without the football field, track. The track's also 11 years old, and the track has had problems with, Miss Marcus, what lanes are they?
They're 3 and 4.
Lane 4, and
3 and 4.
3 and 4, and have for numerous years. We have patched and tried to repair them also. Those repairs, again, because of time, and the time that you have things, they wear out. It needs to be replaced at this time. So again, sort of up to you all as to what you want to do. However, my recommendation would be it needs to happen.
Now, knowing what we know, that Jefferson High School has the same issue of a non-usable track and more than 2 lanes.
I evaluated it myself the other day, and I called Field Turf, and they're going to send me a couple texts to see how they can repair it and how significant the change is. I took pictures, and I sent those pictures off to Field Turf, because while they're here doing this field, this track, they could repair that track very easily. So
can they give us a quote on
is,
both repairing it and both doing a new track the same as this? If they could give us a deeper
they
discount,
certainly can give me
as
both.
well as the fact that then they're both warranted by the exact same company and they're putting it at the exact same
No
time.
problem at all.
I just at least would like to see
The
the
price
price
for
on
that.
that, because if they're gonna do it and you're gonna spend $50,000 to $60,000 to patch it or fix it with no guarantee, cause they didn't do the original work. So then we're just gonna be back to throwing money away again, and I kinda would like to know
That track's not
what
that
the
old.
options are.
That track was replaced 8 years ago, and I had no idea it was that old myself, because I did it. I was the overseer of it, but it's an 8-year-old track at this point. And the 90% of anything that's wrong with the track at Jefferson is in one area. However, I don't do this for a living. So that's what we want, is real track people to come out and give us a real estimate as to exactly what needs to be replaced or repaired. And I can certainly get them to give me a price for repairing it all or replacing it all, so that they're both at the exact same age.
How many lanes are at Jefferson?
Jefferson has 8.
8, same as Washington?
Yes.
And the Washington's track needs to be totally replaced, or is it like
it needs to be totally
Jefferson?
replaced according at this point. That's again from Field Turf directly, and from other people we've talked to. They believe that it needs to be totally replaced right now.
So Washington needs to be totally replaced, but Jefferson
And
you think needs to be?
I think it just needs redone. But at the same time, it's not my, what I do for a living. You all know, and I would have to, but I'd have them give me a report. I've already called them. I've already given them pictures. I already was told that they'd be out shortly to give me a report. So I can call tomorrow, of course, and talk to Patrick Zern. He's the guy who's running the situation. So, and he could, and I've worked with him before.
So we think it would be the same price as
I
what was
can't
quoted
tell
here?
you what the price would be, because one matters whether we're going to dig the asphalt out, and that's what we're doing at Washington, digging the asphalt out completely, putting new asphalt in completely, then putting the topping on top of it. Where at Jefferson, I know the people that put those in, and they were very, very diligent on the asphalt. It had to be perfect. They made them do it 3 and 4 times so that it was perfect, because the asphalt is sort of the base of the whole thing. Without having perfect asphalt, you don't want to try to put a track on top of it, because you have to then put layer after layer of track. The layer of rubber at Jefferson is good that thick right now, because again, the way it's supposed to be, but it came completely loose from the asphalt. And that's really what's wrong with it more than anything, is that spot came completely loose from the asphalt. We don't know, it's only in one area of it. Why it's only one area of it, I don't know. However, I know we take more gators and things like that out on that track than I like. But I would like you just to go straight across and never touch the track again. So it's all about, those kind of things that happen.
Mr. Dingus, what is our maintenance schedule? How do we keep things maintained?
Well, a good example of the football field. The football field has been maintained every year, and we've had people out to do that maintaining. We pay them directly. Mm-hmm. Ms. Marcus sometimes shares that cost or things with us, and she has in the past. We've worked together in many different ways. But Jefferson has a company that, Clear Vision, which happens to be a company that does like golf courses and other things that keeps up the turf. That's their job, to keep the turf up. And the turf in my time has become a whole lot better. This year is not a good example because we had so much rain, and so much rain made it so hard. So, you have those kind of issues sometimes as you get longer into it. However, the company that we've had has really changed that field from having a lot of problems to having no problems unless you have a year like this year. So, and the board made that decision, some of you all sitting here, made that decision to make sure that you were giving Jefferson the best kind of turf that we could possibly, the best kind of natural field that we could.
Beth, this is the type of thing that we were hoping to roll into the bond that we would hopefully be running in September. Is there a way that we could do these things now and still roll it into the bond?
Do you have a dollar amount? You're talking about the million plus, you want $2
$1.5
million?
million,
$1.5 million?
roughly.
What are you planning on doing though, because of?
You don't get to,
No, I'm sorry.
We would do the work now, but we would eventually roll that money into the bond, if the bond passes in
Legal
September.
counsel's not here, but I do believe that we can reimburse ourselves for bond expenditures based on that meeting we had for a certain amount of time. I think certainly there might be a way to do that, if the bond passed.
Because we just don't have $1.5 million sitting around.
We did make that inquiry regarding the land, and that is an allowable, action on the part of the board if you purchase land with cash and then you have a bond within a subsequent time period, you can recoup the cost of the land. We have not made that inquiry about, repairs to facilities, specifically to legal counsel, but we could ask our attorney and bring back that information to the board.
I mean, to
You
the
do
people
have
that
your
are sitting
board
out there right now,
annexed,
we
your-
would like to fix these things as soon as possible. But
And the balance in your board, when you sold your annex property, that's reserved by the board, is, Ralph, do you remember what it was?
2.4 million.
2.4 million at this.
well, we spent
2.3.
some of that.
2.3, because
I
we've
was gonna
spent
say,
about.
we spent some of that 2.4.
No, well, it was
the-
2.5.
It was 2.5.
Okay, so it's
On the
down.
balance.
That's
Yeah, the
taken
current
from
balance
reserves.
right now available in that, account is 2.4.
So we could roll, you can find out for us whether we can roll that into the bond in September if we would get the bond passed.
I would also, and again, the decision that the board makes tonight or subsequently with more information, I think needs to be accompanied by a budgeting discussion. In that for many of these large expenditures, gymnasiums, tracks, fields, the soccer field, we don't have a practice, probably because there simply just wasn't the finances previously of, if you know that every 10 years we're going to have to replace a $1 million football field, put $100,000 every year aside, knowing that that's coming, so that every 10 years, 8 years, the board isn't faced with this enormous sort of scramble of, well, where are we gonna get this money?
Thank you, that's what I was gonna say.
I'm sorry, sir.
That
Yeah,
also
we
involves
know we're gonna do
choices,
that.
so
We
we
need-
have always recognized that we need to make those. Our formula's not set up for capital expenditures, but also $100,000 a year would be for one high school and is 2 teachers or something else that has to decline.
Well,
We'll
but it's
talk
not
about.
just 100,000 a year, because
Correct.
we have a football field and 2 tracks, and the tracks are
Correct.
gonna need to be
Right.
in that
Every 10 years.
every 10
Well-
years as well.
We have to look at something else too for in the future, because Jefferson, you've got the makings of a soccer field, which is bigger than a football field. And something else. And anyway, there are several things coming up that are gonna be high dollar things that we don't have. And what we need to do, I think, is to set this thing up as a part of the, bond levy. Because there are a lot of fans of athletics in this county, and this would give them one incentive to maybe look positively to that bond, if they know they're gonna get something out of it. And I think we need to keep that in mind and not put a lot of money up front that we really don't have, and we don't know for sure whether we're gonna be able to replace it.
If I don't know in the next 2 weeks, we can't get it done in the summer. I can't guarantee that date. He told me very quickly he needed to know.
Let me ask, is it possible to do Washington's field and Jefferson's track with this estimate? Since it's 8 lanes on both, and the field is the most important, I mean, the dire, like right now, we have to do it at Washington, and the track, I mean.
The track at Washington has had issues for quite a long period of time.
Just trying to
And
balance.
I understand, but when you go to put a new football field in, the likelihood of that track getting worse is very high, because you're going to have these people moving over the track over and over and over, replacing and replacing the field.
Plus
And there's
the
a
fact where it is
great
not-
amount of site work that has to happen.
Right. And when you're pouring concrete and the things that you need to do for the field, and then because they're gonna have to have their, the surface redone as well with the blacktop, I think the risk of then damaging a $700,000 field, I think where I totally get what you're saying, I don't think that risk is worth it. I think it's worth, trying to figure out how we do them together, and then they're done by one company and it's all certified. But I definitely hear what you're saying. We've gotta try to figure out.
I can also force real quickly to try to get him here to get me that price on Jefferson. But at the same time, he will be in the area when they do Jefferson. When they do Washington, it may make it a whole lot easier to get the repair at Jefferson because of the mobilization things. There only are like 2 track companies in this half of the United States. They don't exist very hard. The guys that Field Turf will be using is the same guys that we've used before.
But will you specifically ask him? I don't want you to
Sure.
ask him how much does it cost just to repair it. I wanna know.
No.
Actually, specifically.
Certainly.
What kind of a discount are you gonna give me?
Yeah.
If I let you just go ahead and
Fine, if we
place
do
this
both,
here.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you both jobs for one heck of a good discount. For
We
you to
certainly,
fix
I
that,
always
but-
ask for a discount wherever I'm at.
I have a couple questions. The first one is, in the bid, it has an allowance for the sinkhole
Yes.
of $25,000.
$25,000.
I mean, sometimes sinkholes are not fixable with $25,000.
We do know that, but the best estimate we could do is that $25,000.
So if it's
There
40,000,
could be a change order if that estimate is high, if that estimate is low. He did believe, he had looked at the change, and he did believe that the 25,000 would fix it. What they'll do is put concrete in if they can find the throat, they'll put concrete in the throat, filling the throat of it completely, and then being able to come back and put gravel and other things on top of that. We always try to fill the throat if you can, though.
okay, then my next question is, you said that this is the state bid company.
This is the state bid price, yes.
Now, are we sure that that's the best price that we
They've-
can get? And number one, and number two, is it the best company?
Yes. Well, number 2 is the easy one. Yes, it's the best company. It is the best football field that they make today.
I can
Well-
attest to that, the fact that when we were looking at that as I was a football booster at Jefferson High, we, Mr. Brown and I, the athletic director, actually interviewed 6 different companies. Field Turf was one of the ones that we interviewed. They do a majority of the NFL fields today. They have great, the GMAX testing. Their numbers are better than anybody else we could find. And that field alone at that point was gonna be over $1 million. So this must be
Well,
It's a good
state
price.
bid price.
this is for the HD Classic, and they've got 11 different types of turf that they have. And so I want to make sure that we're not getting, the Yugo version of the turf.
Okay.
Because then maybe it'll last 5 years instead of 11 more years. So I would just make sure, just somebody do their homework to make sure that the type of turf that we're getting, not just the company, is what we actually need and want. And then as far as the type of turf goes, we spent half the evening this evening talking about, student safety and this and that. I know that a lot of companies have the fill for the turf that is non-cancer causing, and so that might be something that we might want to look at as well, just
We've
because it is
spoken with them about
accessible.
the cork versus the,
Yeah, there's
rubber
cork
in
versus
it.
rubber versus, there's like coconut shells. There's
That's one of
a
the
bunch
good
of
news
different.
about field turf, and they do offer, I think, more of a variety. At least that's what we found then.
They do offer it. However, is that going to double the price? I just don't know what this 2.5-inch HD Classic. I just want somebody to make sure that they do their homework.
And if you're using a groom, right, and sweeper, does the groom, right, and sweeper only work with the rubber, or does it actually work with the cork, or does it have to have a different special brush for the cork over the rubber? There's all these very specific things that,
Right.
we're just willing to nitpick them to death, Ralph, if you need some help on that.
I certainly
we
can get you
women
this
will just
information.
take care
I
of those
really do
questions.
need a decision though as quickly as possible, because it's gonna be very difficult. They fill up,
I know.
and they're the only, one of the only games in town. And since they fill up, it makes it very difficult, and we need this to happen before August 1, or we need to get done before August 1.
I have a question only because I wasn't here when the initial decisions regarding this were made, and I actually, Ralph very kindly allowed me to go out there with the guy who was doing the evaluation last time, the first time we came by. One of the things that he said, deep cleansing breath, but one of the things that he said is, you guys made the decision to have like this giant W in the middle of this, and these specialized, patriots on the end, and every one of those is hand sewn. We have to cut and sew them together. It's more seams, and you are more likely going to have degradation because you chose to do these decorative things. I know. I know. Deep breath. Deep breath. I am only stating that those decisions, and if you look in the price quote, that's an extra $30,000 to have those in there. They mean a lot to people. They want to see those things, and I don't know if you have other choices or if you have a committee who got together and decided that, but there may be some discussion about, are we gonna do this, yes or no, and then have a budget, and then you can have a committee who says, oh, well, if we wanna get the cork, then we can't get this. If we wanna get these letters, then we, to your point, that's a lot of detail work that I don't know that this board's prepared to walk through tonight, because Ralph doesn't have all the data for you. Because he couldn't know what questions you were gonna ask.
No, and I understand that.
Can I just clarify one more thing for you, Ralph?
Sure.
I know with the original piece that was put in there, we did some site work, we did some this. Is this bid, they do everything? We are not touching it with
Right.
any of our own people,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay, so that's good.
So, and before we vote, Gary, you brought up something about the soccer field out at Jefferson and waiting for the bond, and I just hope that we can agree, not vote, but just agree that we want to reinvest in our kids, and the bond will be an excellent opportunity for us to do that and get on a schedule where we know when we're replacing things, and it's no question. And I would also like to see lacrosse be offered here in Jefferson County, and all of those initiatives are going to take our community to say, yes, we will do this. So I just want to, I guess, publicly say that if we vote to do this now, with the money that we have, that our commitment is to reinvesting in our athletics, our fields, our students, through the bond.
Going to that point, if we find out that we cannot reimburse ourselves for this repair and maintenance backdated, with the bond. They do have payment plans on here for field turf, you know, so I wonder if we make a payment now to get it done, and then when the bond comes through, pay the rest off. Now, that's a big gamble that we would take because we would definitely need everybody to come out and support the bond.
Well, I'm here now.
I'm looking at you now. So, would that be an option as well? I mean, that's something that
I'll have to
another.
call, but I'm sure.
Make sure that we
I'm
can
sure.
finance that.
I can ask that question when I ask the one about whether or not we can roll it into the bond. What if it's paid up front? Is there a difference if we make payments and the payments occur after the bond? I'll make sure that I ask that as well.
Only because we had to go through the county commission to do the loan on the bus garage. I think that there might be some restrictions that I wanna make sure that we can. We can certainly loan it to ourselves from that, but I don't know as far as making an agreement with another, or, you know, bank or we could do that.
Right.
So if we make a motion to table this decision until April 6th, are you saying that you can have all of
I
that?
can't guarantee you on April
information.
6th, they're gonna be able to put it in.
I was told they're 6 months out.
Well,
It's
they,
April 8th, unless you're gonna be here Saturday.
they become backed up over the summer, and
We gotta get on
then
this.
you don't have a chance. I was really shocked that he told me he could get it done this summer. But he's also gonna be at Shepherd, putting in a new field. And Shepherd's was done exactly the same time ours was. Because I remember walking Shepherd's brand new field,
Shepherd
as we
has
were
got
thinking about doing it.
Horrible too.
Yeah.
It's
So,
broken.
I mean, as we were doing both of them at the same time, that's giving you a good example of that we didn't get any more use, or they didn't get any more time out of theirs than we got out of theirs. Because we did try to, over and over, to make sure that we had people in every year to do the touch-ups and fix the field, get as much time out as we could.
So how are we supposed to vote on something where we really don't know what the cost will be or what the parameters will be? That's my problem.
I have a
Well,
suggestion
yeah.
that, I have a suggestion that we, take the bottom projected amount and add the 261,000 to it. So we would be voting on 1.3 million for field and track work at both Washington and Jefferson High Schools.
I don't wanna make that commitment yet.
So, Mr. Dingus, when you say that the board has to, because part of this is you're conveying, the board has to make a decision tonight to have the field complete and ready to go opening day in August, if 2 weeks from now, it's, okay, well, we can have it done the second week in September, can we, again, if the choice is, because this
I don't
board could
think
have
that's
said, no,
the-
we're not going to do it at all, and they would still be,
Yeah.
you know, we'd have to make things up, they'd have to
Yeah.
go somewhere else, so a difference in having it done August
And like I
1st
said,
versus.
I don't say that if it doesn't happen tonight, we can't do it over the summer. I'm just been told that I need it as quickly as possible, because we're filling up every day with another one that they have to put in someplace.
And again, I'm just saying if the board doesn't, if you are conveying that you want more information to feel comfortable spending, per Ms. Roper's suggestion, spending 1.3 million, if you want more information from us, then we're happy to give it to you. And I think the decision is whether or not.
I don't know if I can get you that track number for Jefferson in a very short period of time,
In the next 2 weeks.
maybe. Hope so. I can get you some of the other answers tomorrow, but I can't guarantee that.
Well, and part of the question is, will it change your answer? I mean, right now, if the 5 of you are sitting here and you know you're gonna spend this money. So let's say we come back and we say, nope, you can't roll it into the bond. You just have to suck it up, buttercup, and spend that money. And, you know, yes, we can get it for that price. No, you can't get cork. Cork's gonna be another $250,000. Is it going to change your answer? and again, this is exactly what I do to my staff, because sometimes they don't wanna make difficult decisions, and they say, well, let's get some more information. And if the more information has the possibility of changing your mind, then by all means, let's do it. If you know as you sit here right now what decision you're going to make, regardless of what those answers are, then decide, and we'll get you the information on the back end. If you don't feel like that's fiscally responsible, then we will get every answer that we possibly can for you in the next 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, I was actually gonna ask for a special meeting next week, and so if we could get the answers
okay.
this week.
Probably helps.
That was me and Ralph just taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
Back at ya.
Yeah.
That was so nice.
Next week's special session, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, just as I did with Rockwell, can Ralph and I make sure that we know what all your questions are, so we have as many of those answers by special
Okay.
session as we need to?
All right.
Okay. Do you want to tell me those, or you want me to go
We
with what
want
I've
you
got
to
so
tell
far?
us.
So, number one, you want to know whether or not, if you expend those funds, can we roll the cost of the, whether it's WHS or JHS, into the bond? Number two, you want to know whether or not it makes a difference if we pay for the entire thing or we make payments on it over time. Number three, you want feedback on the cost of different types of turf, sort of in a rating system. If we get
Classic
the
versus
classic
the-
versus the court versus,
Well,
Well,
we
no,
want, we
there's
wanna
a
know
curve.
with what they're giving us, whether it's the bottom of the line or the top of the line, or where it ranks in the turf.
Maybe you should ask what Shepherd's getting too, just to
And
compare.
then turf versus, or cork versus,
Fillers, types of
rubber.
Types of
fillers.
fillers,
Yeah.
and the cost of those types of fillers, that's
Rubber
what I would.
type turf versus, cork versus rubber.
turf types. You also want a cost estimate on
Jefferson.
what savings we might have of getting Jefferson, Washington done at the same time by the same company.
And the agenda item would have to include Jefferson High School, not just Washington High School.
Right.
Yes, ma'am, certainly. Was there anything else that you wanted to know that we need to get you before? So, could you?
The point that you brought up as far as the seams and whatnot, what would their recommendation be about that? Cause, I mean, it needs to, like, scream Patriots, but
It does.
it's like, where do we scream it to make it last the longest?
Ralph, do you remember, I vaguely remember that being a change order, and don't remember if we had a funding source, but I think it was an add-on at the end. Gary, do you remember, like,
I
I wanna
can't
say it was
remember.
$47,000
For
to
what?
do that, the logo.
The
I
logo.
think they called it a logo. Judy, do you remember?
Yeah, it was probably about that much.
And I don't remember, what I don't remember is if we had a funding source or a contribution for.
Gosh, we might have used the money that, from our cell tower, that probably was like $100,000 at first.
There's something in the back of my head that's saying the reason we
I
did
think
it
you're right.
was short-term
I
but
still
not
remember that
long-term.
cell tower question.
Do you remember?
So we got any more cell towers?
Invited me,
We're
come
still
on,
getting
build
bad.
it.
We should-
No, but we have a guy that
Somehow we
calls
gotta be able to help Charlestown.
about every other month wanting us to make another deal with.
Can we put one
Hey.
there, Debbie?
It's just not high enough for Dr. Gibson yet.
And
You have to
don't
make
think
those
that you won't
commitments.
have the J-High soccer folks in here in 2 weeks, asking when we're gonna put a turf field in there. To Ms. Roker's point, we have a lot of needs and not enough money to go around. So does that capture all of the questions that the board would like for us to get an answer on before special session?
I think that we are supportive of, fixing the field. I just think we need all of our questions answered before we jump into over $1 million.
Absolutely.
And I think we want to get Jefferson High's track fixed as well. It's not that we're not wanting to fix either one of them.
So we'll get this one on both. And then we'll put on a special session for your consideration as early as we can next week. We need the 3 days, so you guys will need to give Janet some feedback on your availability so we can set it up. And we'll put it on for Jefferson and Washington and get you as much of this data ahead.
And let me just say, thank you, because if you notice, we had comments about, the track, but both of those tracks, we're in track season, both of those tracks have unusable lanes. And both of those schools have had to accommodate trying to figure out how to do that with minimal, they can't host a meet, they have their own, and there has not been complaints. And I think it's because they do trust that we know and we do want to do those things as quickly as we can financially. So, you know, we definitely recognize that accommodations are trying to be met, and I do appreciate going above and beyond for all that's being done.
And being here at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
All right, so, do we have a motion to get further information and place the action on the high school athletic field on the next board meeting?
On a special board meeting.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Ms. Marone.
Madam President, Madam Superintendent, board members, I am Beth Marone and have two presentations tonight, and just a reminder that this meeting is not adjourned and reconvened.
Right. Can we take just a 30-second
yeah, sure.
Potty break.
Sure.
All right, Ms. Marone.
Okay, two presentations. One is the fiscal year financial overview, and the second one will be for the board to lay the levy, excess levy rates, pending state approval. Don't adjourn the meeting, reconvene third Tuesday in April to officially adopt them. Tonight we're going to start with the financial overview for fiscal year 19. We are required between the 8th and 28th of March to meet and give a formal presentation to the board to ascertain our fiscal position. Feel free to stop me with any questions if needed. You'll see a little bit of tweaking this year on the presentation, even though for the most part it's been the same over 15 years. That's trying to tie it back to the state's new system, the Zoom system that you're seeing on a monthly basis, is why you'll see it broken down into a little bit different of categories. These are our revenue highlights, broken down into regular levy and excess levy, which will tie into the presentation, the next presentation with a little bit more detail. Other than that, no highlights for revenue with the exception of Medicaid, and that we've received $204,000 year to date. But of that is, we are still collecting from the 3-year ago change, so 158,000 of that 200 is for 15 and 16, what they call MAC claims. I can't remember, it's some kind of Medicaid administrative claims, I think. FTEs, this is a presentation that's been adjusted a little bit from previous years, and what I want to understand is data and making sure you understand the data. So for financial purposes, we use adjusted FTEs. What that means in the state of West Virginia is a professional counts for one, regardless of how many days are in their contract. A service position counts for one as a 200-day employee up to 1.305 as a 261-day employee. And if you look at the bottom of that slide, I gave you a calculation for how those adjusted FTEs are calculated. You can see that we hired 16 people this year. Last year we hired 14. What I've also added a couple years ago is the per state aid formula to identify approximately per 100 students how many professional staff you should be adding and how many service staff you should be adding. Mr. Osborne, based on your request, I now include from those board-approved positions a breakdown between special education and regular education.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, hang on, I'm trying to find all that information. Okay, I see
It's down in the left-hand corner, if you're looking at it. So, and that calculation for per 100 will change, you know, not significantly, you know, but roughly. And then the adjusted FTE. What I added is that last column saying head count, because what I want the board to understand is the way the formula is set up, we get funded on that FTE, but from a head count standpoint, and somebody asks you how many body count people do we actually have in our system, We are 1304.95 for adjusted FTEs, the way we're funded through the state formula. However, if you really want to know the count, we don't have 542.45 service people in our system. We actually have 478, which is full-time equivalents, meaning a half-time position counts as half-time. 2 half-time positions equal 1.
And the state only pays us, or reimburse us, if you will, for 200-day contracts, correct?
On professional only.
On professional.
That's
only.
and
So
that's important.
service,
I
we
think
can
you guys
have
made that
them.
point with the legislators the last time. That formula, in my opinion, is very antiquated. We run almost, even though we don't traditionally go year-round, we're running a year-round school system. It would be unheard of not to have extended day for our guidance counselors and some of the positions in the professional education world. That, I mean, it would be impossible almost, but yet they only fund us for 200 days of that contract, which is where our excess levy comes in to play. New slide. Second month enrollment. A very important data right now. 3-year trend was every 3 years we basically didn't grow, or we grew by very little. This is the first year that we had a pretty big hit, and the combined total of our student enrollment has declined. And remember, we're using FTE for formula purposes. I gave you head count because depending on what world you live in, instruction, you may hear those numbers quoted differently, but it's the data that they use to operate in the world that they're living in. Expenditure highlights, nothing significant. We're on target for most everything. We'll have some highlights at the end with some uncertainties, but at this point, there's nothing out of the ordinary for me to say. I think, Ms. Roper, I did look at a couple things, and that was in the supplies. I know it's difficult to look at that and really get a gauge on what you want. But when I broke the supplies down within that line item, you have about $600,000 for custodial and maintenance supplies, which aren't directly instructional to the children, but that's what it takes in order to keep our schools operational. $2.7 million is electricity, is also embedded in that 600 or those supplies line item. It does include those type of expenditures.
Yeah, thank you for that response. You said about
Did that help?
500,000 directly to the kids.
Yeah, and to our school allocation, and that's what I could give you right away. I would say it's probably triple or quadruple that if you start looking at individual departments and then Title I and those other programs outside the general fund.
What is the balance? What does that mean? I mean, I see what the balance is, but
okay.
What do you mean by it?
The current budget would be any, from the original adopted budget, any of those budget supplements and transfers that you approved tonight. The year-to-date actuals would be actually people have sent an invoice into finance and we have physically paid it. POs mean that they think they're going to spend that money, and at this point, those are unencumbered funds. Now, I know that supplies line item, and Mark will attest to it, depending on the management at the school level, they'll wait until around this time to start gathering what their needs are and what their second part of the last part of their school system is to spend some of those.
Or you're spending it then to get you ready for next
You're
year.
right.
So, is it possible that, say, health, dental, vision balance of 778 could be carryover?
It is possible. It would be highly unlikely. There are some things that aren't projected out in there, and that's our retiree benefits that get booked at year end. Probably last year it did have a favorable balance, but it was closer to 300,000. This is a snapshot in time as of February 28th.
I'm just trying to guesstimate, because your salary contracts, that's through the end of the year, right? What you have encumbered?
Well, what you have encumbered is people that we currently have employed and have hit payroll. The balance are maybe your board approved somebody tonight who doesn't have a full salary and hasn't hit payroll, so their salary is not projected. Also, the line item under substitutes, when you have vacancies,
Oh, yeah.
the vacancies also play into your contracted salaries. So you might not be able to hire a position, and so we still need to account for how that substitute is being paid for the entire year. Plant and equipment is new. It lines up more with the Zoom. We have very little with plant and equipment, but I thought it would be good to see that pulled out, and that's why we pulled that out this year. Next few slides are additional revenue sources, and basically give you what we ended up with fiscal year 18, projected collections and transfers, drawdowns, and what I expect as of February 28th those balances to be.
I'm sorry, back on the other page, contingency. What was that again?
Contingency, when we adopt a budget, we typically have a board-approved contingency for any unforeseen uncertainties or things that come up, and that was board approved. I think originally at $450,000. The difference was allocated into travel. I think originally at the beginning of this adopted budget, we had thought that we could buy a vehicle and save on individual travel. That didn't materialize, so we reestablished those budgets into the individual departments, taking that contingency down from 450 to 407, 420.
Okay.
Just always there for the board to know that if there is something that we could come and say, hey, JALT has exhausted their reserve, we have an unforeseen incident, it's safety, and we need to use that contingency to supplement whatever that need is. The next few slides are additional revenue sources. These are sources that don't actually sit in the general fund, but outside the general fund. These board designated and board designated Annex L, which we were speaking about earlier today, and table referendum funds all reside in Fund 51, which is called your capital or your construction fund. And these are the projected balances at year end. Oh, and impact fees, which actually don't sit on our books at all. We only draw those funds when we have a specific project. They collect them and they reside at the county commission.
And Ralph, what type of projects would we have to would qualify for that money?
Well, any new construction, of course.
New construction. Okay.
But it has to be capital funds. Capital funds are more than $50,000. Any new construction could be more than $50,000.
Okay.
And they're designated by part of the school. So in other words, you can't use all of them anyplace unless you've not used that before, unless you haven't used it before. For example, the bus garage, when we got to the end of the bus garage, we couldn't use impact fees because we were out of impact fees in that section. And then the next section is like secondary and elementary. So you can only, and they're looking at about 50% right now, so you could only use half of them at elementary to build, or half of them at secondary to build. What happened with our good land buys, we had all three in the same section. You could do two, secondary and elementary, at the same time, because those were big enough tracts of land that you're gonna run a campus of some sort. So for that reason, we could use all of the funds that we had at that time. Right this moment, we're looking at like $3 million. I think there's $3 million some odd dollars in there right this second. But those are the kind of things you can expand them for, and it really has to be, they're supposed to be for a growth reason of some sort.
And Ralph, we
Or new
looked at
construction.
this earlier today. So we spent $3.1 million on the land that we just recently purchased, $2 million for the new bus garage, $8 million for Washington High School, $3.5 million for Driswood, $6 million for Harpers Ferry Middle School, $1.7 million for Shepherdstown South Jefferson addition. Blue Ridge campus, $1 million, and then Roos, and I think we bought like Ranson and
You can
Harpers
do
Ferry,
some
we bought
matching
some land
roof
for about
funds
$500,000.
as they allow.
You can do some.
Yeah,
roofs.
some of that.
Okay.
Most of that would take our 408, though. And 408 is about growth in the county. So as the county itself, not us, the county itself grows, the larger the amount of money the county's worth as a whole, which allows us to have a bigger bond at that point, or levy, as that grows, we get a portion of that given to the school system for 408 money. And that also has to be used for capital.
And I have a slide in here on that.
Right.
Because it's not in our formula.
And real quick with table referendum, specific numbers, what are we looking for the last 2 years? Not necessarily our balance, but our collections.
It's on another slide. 20, I do believe initially in 19, I thought we would only collect 1.8. When I looked at it last week, I do think we'll hit 1.9. Okay. So what that still means on the slide is that we're spending 2.2 and we're only collecting 1.9, and for fiscal year 20, I think Ms. Ogden, you recommended, and I agree that for 20 we're going to lower that amount to 1.8, because right now we're eating into our balance, and at some point in the future, probably after I'm retired, you might have to be able to address that. So I think if you can get it down to 1.6 over the next 6 years, it will be beneficial. Board does, go ahead.
How long will we have to pay the drawdowns, the $2.1 million?
The 1.9 of it is what we transfer into our general fund. So as we lower that, we either need to cut expenses or have other revenue to replace it. The bus lease revenue, I think is 15 years. I don't know if I noted it or not. I don't know if I have it on this slide. It was 15 years. I think it was a 15-year loan.
And we can't finish paying that off with the bond?
That's a good question. I think that we could. I think we have a pretty decent,
Got a good rate on
we
that.
do have a pretty decent rate, but it's certainly something that we could look at as an option for that at that time.
We're gonna be looking at $100 million bond.
Since we're asking this.
Board designated, highlight here and the years projected, just trying to let the board see that, you know, we have continuously used that allocation to balance our budget, which is not new. We did have a significant increase at the fiscal year of last year. That was pretty much Medicaid catching up for the past 3 years. Revenue, which bumped it to, I think it was over $5 million carryover. Table referendums just highlights. I think, Ms. Roper, you had the question on what is the drawdowns. If you see 20, 21, and 22 at this point, I'm recommending 1.8 million, depending on how other revenue goes. We, you know, may drop that again. For our 20 budget, it's going to be difficult because we're $1.5 million down on state aid, and we have some other challenges coming up.
So how realistic would it be to get back to that $7,772 additional funding need from fiscal year 16? Because we're up to $854,000 now. Like, how realistic would that be to get that need back to that low amount?
Where are you at? I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Fiscal go to the
previous page.
7,772.
Needs. I think that was probably just in that year. We only had one request for 7,000. I think it was just an additional funding need, meaning probably when the carryover came through, and instead of transferring the funds to board designated, we subtracted that additional need. I don't remember what it was.
not understanding. So,
Okay. So we start with the beginning balance of board designated, which is what is in there. For the prior year carryover, we have two things. That one is the carryover is what we're going to transfer into the board designated line item. The budget supplement were probably things in that budget that we couldn't cover, so we decided to supplement. The additional funding needs were probably something else that came above and beyond the budget supplement, either after, I'm not really sure, I can't remember what exactly that is. But getting back to that, the ending balance, we had to use those funds, those additional funding needs in some manner in our system in fiscal year 16, leaving us an ending balance of 1.9. I can look it up and email you what those additional needs. At this point, I can't remember why we separated them out. Table ref 408, just to highlight to the board, this is not in our formula, and I know at least, this is the first in about 3 years I haven't heard it brought up for cutting at the legislative level. And we've gotten a lot of money and done a lot of good things with it.
And sometimes it's a weird way you get it. For example, one year that we got 800,000, which we used for a roof at North. But it was because the utilities in the county expanded. It wasn't about house expansion, it was about the utilities. And since the utilities were worth a whole lot more than the county.
It's the infrastructure that they actually assessed.
Right.
And we had, in 18, they had a lot of infrastructure added.
What is the balance now in that 408 fund?
There is no balance. They use it annually in the maintenance budget. So this year they had 268,850. They may have 40-some thousand left.
Maybe.
Yeah, they use it annually.
We don't know until like May of the year before.
Well, was that extra money that you used, or did it free up some general money?
It just freed up some general money. We've gotten to the point we'd be hard to live without 200,000 or so a year.
It's on top of their
I mean, we've been spending
general fund.
that mostly for roofs and HVAC
repairs
and any growth that we have.
This is the year-end fund balance reconciliation. As you can see, we started with 4.6 million, had some commitments, and then a transfer that went into that board designated balance of 4.8 million, which will be helpful as we go into our 20 budget. Here, page 12 is just a fund balance history, so that you can see where the fund balance is. We did have GASB, which is Governmental Accounting Standard Board, implementation in 18 that allowed us to remove the OPEB liability, which we had to book it, and then I backed it out so that you would know how much money we had left. We no longer have to do that. Just a bar graph of the same data.
So where is that 5.6 million?
So that 5.6 million, part of it went to supplement different things and to current encumbrances that we had. And the remainder of it went into board designated, or 3.953 of it was transferred back into board designated, giving you currently a projected balance of 4.6 million at the end of this fiscal year. Which just lets me remember, so the budget supplement, this is answering your earlier question, I'm sorry it's late. So the budget supplement is what we require from board designated to balance our budget. The additional funding needs are additional requests that when we carry those funds over that we need to do in our current budget for something. That's the difference. So
For example, one year we had all that snow and we had no way to remove it, and we had a broken plow, and we had to end up buying two trucks and plows to plow snow, which obviously that was not in the budget
Not
because
something we planned
we didn't
for.
plan on 100 inches of snow. So it had to come from somewhere.
Is that the contingency that you're speaking of, or this,
We didn't touch the contingency,
No.
we used from the carryover, instead of taking all of the carryover into board designated, we supplemented the current budget with different area. I didn't bring that document, but it was a board approved document.
so do we have a savings? Like a savings account that we don't touch?
That would be your fund balance. It's referred to as fund balance, but if I had to give an analogy of what it's like your savings account, that you draw from that, and you have a balance, and then you every year look at what your revenues were and your expenses, and the net difference of that, what you carry over, we kind of add it to that board designated or fund balance. Last slide is just a projection, which I typically at this time have a projection, but with the reorg and the changes, I haven't quite got anything to project out at this point, but it's coming.
So how are you feeling about our standing?
With next year's budget?
Yes.
Well, I think it's gonna be a tough budget. So we're $1.5 million down in state aid. You're gonna see our levy did grow. We have a lot of competing needs. We just talked about capital improvements and funding them. And we can do that, but typically it gets to the end of the year and it's about choices. So we can't do everything, but we can make choices.
And I think an interesting choice that's out of our hands is the legislative decision on the 5% pay raise, which we certainly are very supportive of for our staff, but will end up costing us about $750,000 simply to maintain all the staff that we have now, regardless. So
Step 5 would really help us a lot, and you'll see that on the levy. Step 5 would help us a lot. If we pushed it for anything, it would be nice not to fund it at 200, but
Not to mention our increasing growth in the special ed area and the level of supports that are required to maintain that.
and human resources benefits as far as making sure our employees have the services that they need, which are very needed. That employee assistance program is awesome. All right. Any questions, or we're ready to move to proposed levy rates?
Yes,
ma'am.
I did give you a document. This document is what gets published in the newspaper. I wanted you to see it. It will be published probably next week. But this presentation tries to summarize it in a different way that I hope is more meaningful. The school has 3 types of levies. We have a current expense levy, which I refer to as a regular levy, a bond levy, and an excess levy. It's one of the things we didn't get to talk to the legislators about. I think the excess name needs to be changed to supplemental levy. I think in this Jefferson County, excess is not exactly what we use it for, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Page 3 gives you an overview of how the levy money actually processes through the school system. Page 4, basically approximately 75%, and I will say I haven't looked at that number in about 5 years, but it's roughly plus or minus around 75% of all tax collections that get allocated to our schools. It accounts for 38% of our total revenue. That would be all levies together, all 3 levies together in our total budget with all funds. And then it breaks down by the percentages below by individual levies. This year we're up, our assessed values are up 4.7%, which is good news. That means we'll get more money in all of our levies. Our current levy is set by the legislator currently. It is step 9 of 10, and it's an inverse relationship with state aid. So, with all counties, regardless of whether you have an excess levy or not, if your taxes go up, your state aid goes down. If your state aid, or if your taxes go down, your state aid goes up to cover that difference. Our bond levy will mature very shortly. This year, our bond rates are slightly down, so our taxpayers should see a difference in their tax bill. And that payoff for that bond is 2020. West Virginia 11-8-12 requires us to set, the board to set the proposed excess levy rates, submit them to the state auditor, and reconvene this meeting on the third Tuesday, once they've been approved to officially lay those rates. Our excess levy has been approved in Jefferson County since 1946. Can't remember where I got that data, but I'm sure I found somewhere that had it. And this year, or this current levy runs from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 2021. This year, our excess levy has increased by $708,658. This is our current excess levy call. This call was established probably a year prior to the actual levy. Those rates were what were in effect at that time. I think that's important as we go into the rest of the presentation to understand that when we did this excess levy call, that it's a budget, it's a snapshot in time. There are no growth factors built into it. We take that number and we multiply it out by 5 years and set that as a budget, and then the collections come either higher or lower.
So if our expenses go up, we hope that the assessed values are more because that gives us money to fulfill the budget. But if it doesn't, we have to try to figure out, or we go into a hole and then have to make it up the next year.
And this trend data is the budget that we have set at least since fiscal year '09.
Okay.
And I will say in my time frame, and I'm sure in somebody's prior to mine, that values did go down. And if you look in fiscal year 11, our budget levy call was 20.095, and you can see that the years after that, we did not collect at that current amount. What's our levy spent for? I put this slide here last year, and I think a lot of times you see a $16 million slide and people want to know, what do you spend your money on, or what do we vote on to fund the school system. Supplemental paychecks, we get one in March, we get one in November, and we get one in May. $5.4 million approximately to our staff. All employees across the board, full-time and half-time, receive a supplement to their current contracted salary. On top of that, our pay scale is much more favorable than what the state requires, to a tune of $2.5 million. And if you look how that arrow is, it's actually defined for when we submit our salary supplements to the state based on number of years you have with the school system and professional in service. So if we had no excess levy, not only would you lose 3 supplemental checks, in addition to that, your contracted salary that's divided for the most part, mostly over 24 months, some of us still choose 20, you would lose those additional amounts over the year. Extended contracts, those are just professionals. So every professional that is employed within the school system who has a contract greater than 200 days is funded from our excess levy. Over or not covered by the formula, I don't know if they've seen that. I don't have that current data, but you'll see it at budget time. That's what it cost our system for service professional and not eligible to be funded, myself included in that. So you're not required, you are required to have my position, you are not funded for my position. So,
West Virginia.
right, and I think we, just to reiterate our meeting with our representatives, 2,400 total positions within the state of West Virginia, service and professional combined, are not funded by the formula. That does not include who are not eligible. That number does not include who are not eligible to be funded. So within that number, it still doesn't include the 55 treasurers that are required within the state, and there's other positions too. Supplemental pay for both professionals in service, and then substitute cost. This is your regular and excess levy trend data, compares your budget to your actuals. This is normally the slide that I get. I've broken it down in a little bit more detail because we've had some questions about the excess levy lately. I have trended this data for 15 years, and if you look at that variance, you can see that sometimes we collected a lot of money, sometimes we collected a little money, and sometimes we collected a negative money. That allowance, I can't remember if it was there last year, but that's new. And that allowance is an allowance for people who don't pay their taxes on time or ever or in arrears. And that allowance allows us to project what we expect to collect, if we really will collect it, and based on trend data, that the probability that we won't collect it within the year that we need it.
Ms. Moran?
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you for 1 second, but can I have a motion to go past 10:30?
Oh, wow.
Second?
I'm done.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we can proceed.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next two slides take that data and break it down just a little bit because of the questions that we have. And I thought it was important to go down and see what that detail. So in a really nice world, we would have a budget and we would send our tax bills out, we would collect everybody's money, and it would fund the school system. That doesn't always happen. People have issues, people have concerns. So I broke it down by regular levy, excess levy, and the total of those two, which tie back to the previous slide. So if you look at your regular levy, you can see that within a fiscal year, you're not collecting everything that you would expect to collect for the most part, or it's in the negative, and sometimes it's in the positive. And so therefore, at the end of the fiscal year, you have what's called a receivable, and you collect that in the next year. And so sometimes that means, like in fiscal year 18, where we collected 3.2 million above and beyond, translate it back to prior years for where those collections actually belonged. We are just collecting them within this fiscal year. I don't know if you have any questions about it. I thought breaking it down in that manner would be more helpful to understand.
I'm just curious, when people pay their taxes late, there's a fee on top of it. Do we get that fee, or
We do.
does the county?
We get that fee. And we get that fee, and it is, I thought it was in here. What? It is within there's another, I didn't break it up, there's another slide called Other, and it's interest and penalties and fees above and beyond.
It's about 8%, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. Oh, here it is right here. It's on this page. Sorry. I'm tired. So this one gives your current year, and it breaks down your regular levy, your excess levy, and the total, net it. Your prior year, meaning that's what we collected in the current year for the previous years. And then, Ms. Roper, this is yours. Interest and other. It's primarily interest in this line item, broken out by regular, excess, and then both of them together. Probably 90% of that, maybe 85%, is interest collected on late tax payments. Okay. Any questions? And if not, Superintendent, recommend levy rates at 100%, please.
Very much like to recommend to the board that we continue to hold the levy rate at 100%.
they're not this year.
Do we don't vote on that now. We
No,
have to
you
vote
do
on
not.
that
It's just, I have to make the
third Tuesday.
recommendation, and then the third
Right.
Tuesday, you act on it.
I'm not losing my mind quite yet.
Okay. We will before it goes to the newspaper, thanks. Thanks, Janet. If the board adopts, they are adopted pending state approval. And then in 3 weeks, we come back, and then if everything looks within code for the way that we projected the levy rates, the board will officially lay those levy rates. They'll get published in the interim because we're required to publish them.
Beth, is there a certain time that meeting has to take place on the 16th?
There's not a certain time that I'm aware of, nor is any other than a quorum. In the past, it's been done by phone. In the past, it's been done a full meeting.
We did it in the morning last year.
11:45, I think.
45 or something like that.
Wow, 11:45.
Magical time.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think at the time to get at least one person here, I think we had a couple of you who could do that. So that there was one person actually on site.
Here. I don't remember. That was a year ago.
We had 2 people here.
So when it says action on approval of proposed levy rates, there is really no action. Is that right?
Yeah, we have.
You have to vote that you approve to unofficially lay them at 100%.
I
So
think what
you're-
you're approving is what
Pending
she's
state
taking to
approval.
the state auditor.
It has to
So, yeah, you're voting to say, yes, we want you to take 100% to the state auditor. She takes it to the state auditor, and then they come back to you and say, yes, you can do that, no, you can't, this is right, this is wrong. And then you officially vote to lay the levy at the
Yeah.
next April meeting.
just change it on those,
Yeah.
make sure it gets.
This document, except that it will be 2019, is apparently still from last year, but this is the document you're voting on to say, these are the levy rates, this is how much we believe we will collect based on our assessed values. That will go to the state auditor, they will verify that they're legitimate and come back. I will tell you that one year I did have an error on it and had to come back, I don't know. I think Gary was probably on the board then. I can't remember if you were or not, Mark.
So I guess I'm still confused. So action on approval doesn't really mean action.
It means the board needs to vote.
You need.
So you do want a motion
Yes.
to approve the proposed rate of 100%?
Correct, sorry.
And, okay. So is
I was gonna say
there a motion, is there a motion
Yes.
on the approval of the proposed levy rate of 100%?
And then is there a second?
Okay, so Arthina and Mark. Any further discussion or question? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, so, do I have a motion to go into executive session for personnel, land, and legal?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.